Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Procrastinators podcast. Nate's not with us this week for the first time, but that's okay because we've got a special guest, friend of the show, Mr. Black and Platinum himself, Nino.
Hey, fuck all your favorites. We're SJWing the fuck out of the PCP. You people had too many white people, not enough POC representatives. I've come here to black up everything with my Negroness. Also, the fact that I'm
whoa,
with
bro.
my Negroness, yes. Expect this podcast to become 30% more urban and hip. You know, the demographics want more hip hop.
We're all just gonna start rapping right in the
Everybody's
middle
gonna
of this
start
one.
rapping, yeah.
All right, yeah, that's
Pretty
true.
much, it's true.
Me
So I'm
and Tom are
DigiBro,
the
and
only
I've-
true white people here. We don't rap.
Yeah. I'm DigiBro, and I've also got with me Ben Saint of Patreon.
Ben Saint of Patreon.com.
And Tommy Oliver. Tommy Oliver was originally in this podcast, but his audio file got corrupted, and therefore I had to try to edit him out of it entirely. So if at any point it seems like the conversation jumps around really strangely, that's because I was editing around Tom. Sorry if it's weird.
I forgot to plug my channel. Okay, guys, you can follow me at Anime Editorial 90. You know, NINOUH. Go watch my YouTube vids. I'm not just a rapper and a black person. I actually do stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have brought me on for any other reason. Like they brought me on because they knew me and they knew that I did YouTube stuff. All right, thank you.
No, we needed someone to do a halftime show in the middle of the podcast. So today's topic, which Nino suggested,
Second
is...
topic I've suggested, by the way.
Yeah, you suggested last week's, or the one that was released last week. But
Yeah.
this topic is, you introduce it.
Well, basically, the topic is our internet origin story. The story of how everyone on this podcast, or the people who are currently doing the podcast, became familiar with the internet. Because if you're watching this, obviously you know how to use the fucking internet. Everyone has their own really intimate and personal way they use it. For example, let me take you through how I wake up in the morning. Like, I'll talk about how I got to this point, but I'll take you through how I wake up in the morning and use the internet. When I wake up, I usually close out the tabs of N-hentai I used the night before. I open up a new tab of Gamatsu to check out all of the stuff to check out all the gaming news that is or isn't happening. I go on 4chan, probably look at a few shit posts. I go on Twitter to see if anyone's been calling me out today. And then I go into my Discord and I start talking shit with all my friends. That's how I use the internet right now. And everyone else has you watching this, you have your own...
The life of a troll, the slice of life story.
We've all got our own little internet fingerprint. We've all got a little internet snowflake, a little fractal spiral, life pattern of internet usage.
Yeah, and basically the point of this podcast is, now I've talked a little bit about where I am with how I use the internet, and this podcast is how everybody got to where they are, how we got to this point, how we learned to torrent stuff, how we learned to watch anime online and stuff. Everybody has a really interesting story, and I feel like everybody has a really cool way to express it. So who wants to go first? Oh man, I feel like everybody on this podcast has Newgrounds in their story at some point. Like,
No, not me. You'll be surprised.
I definitely was on Newgrounds for a while.
Boy.
I avoided Newgrounds like the plague because, as I understood it, that was the place where there were dicks.
Oh boy.
Like literal dicks. For me growing up, I was like, all the seedy side of the internet, like, I was afraid of.
You wanted none of that. You wanted to be all pure and just show your...
Well, I grew up pretty sheltered from, like, both, like, violence and sex stuff. Like, not out of my parents, like, actively sheltering me, but it was more like they kind of, like, I was very, like, if my parents told me something was bad, my instinct was not to then seek it out. It was to go, oh, it's bad? Okay. And then not look at it, you know? It's like, I never looked at, like, stuff that my parents kind of said, like, oh, this isn't for you. This is for adults. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm not an adult. I'm a kid. I'm not going to look at that.
I discovered 4chan and Newgrounds specifically because people told me they were terrible places full of terrible things, which made me go
I avoided them forever. I've only been on Newgrounds like 2 or 3 times just to look at like Ego Raptor's profile when I became a fan of him later.
You dingus! No, they got some. There are some legitimately great Flash games on there. There are a couple of real masterpieces.
Oh, you know what? I played Endeavor.
Oh, wow.
I fucking love Endeavor, dude. Holy shit, I fucking love Endeavor. Oh my god, I can't believe somebody else knows Endeavor.
Ben, we talked about it before.
What?
Like,
I can't.
Okay, well, I'm glad.
Like, I can't remember.
That's why
any
I
of
brought it up specifically.
I can't remember any of the names of them. I can't remember any of the actual like names of the games. But I played pretty much every possible side-scrolling action game and every possible like dating sim that Newgrounds had to offer. Like, every single one of them, all of them. Like, because I found it particularly. I'm younger than all of you guys, so I found it particularly early when I was like 7 years old. But I'll get to my story. Tom, continue yours.
Well, yeah, I want to know, Tom, how did you find Newgrounds to end up with your?
Digi
Blade is a huge
Digi's a well no. Oh no! A barometer.
Are you gonna say I'm a nig whisperer?
No, exactly. I was about to say. No. What I was about to say was, if you want to know what black people like, measure up to what Digi likes to a certain degree, because he has so many nigger tendencies for a white person. It's not even funny. Like, I have through talking to Digi, like the nigger tendencies I've picked up in him. Like, he's one of the only people in the anime community, next to like Lou from Lou Talks Anime, that I can just talk to about hip hop for hours. We were just talking yesterday about like a bunch of rappers. Who was the one you recommended? Cakes the Killer? Like. Yeah, we're just talking about a bunch of just rappers yesterday. And I was telling him how, like, YG is the bad end of Good Kid Mad City and Kendrick is the true end.
You know, but I feel like Lou is into, like white people rap music, though, because every time he recommends me something, it's always, like, a rap rock song. And I'm always like, He's
a fan of a lot of old school battle rap as well, so he is part of that scene as well. So he knows.
I don't want to get too much into the rap stuff.
No,
Tom,
but yeah,
get back to your internet story.
Definitely.
I gotta say, like, 'cause I only have a brief story for that period, because like I also had dial-up up until like 2006, but I just didn't really know about like internet video or downloading until around the time that I got like broadband or whatever. So. The only internet video I remember having that experience with, of like loading it all day, was AMV Hell 3, which is an hour-long AMV thing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That I'm sure you've all probably seen parts of, at least. And it was really big in like the early 2000s. And like back then, the AMV community was like mostly file sharing stuff. It was like people would make AMVs and then torrent them back and forth, or whatever the old peer-to-peer them or whatever. I guess that's what torrenting is. Yeah, like LimeWire. And so that's how like AMVs were before YouTube. And then there was these AMV Hell compilations, and AMV Hell 3 was this giant epic collaborative effort between all these different people. It was an hour long, and I don't remember like what streaming host it used, but it was available for streaming online, and I watched it, and it would be like me and Victor would watch it, and we watched it multiple times this way, and it would just be this all-night endeavor, because like you could load enough, like, each joke was about 30 seconds long, so you could basically, like, pause the video and sit there for, like, 2 or 3 minutes, and then maybe play a little bit of that joke, and it would be just enough that you could get a laugh, and then wait some more. And it was literally all night it would take to watch AMV Hell 3, but it was so fucking good that we fucking dealt with it.
I remember lying in bed on the weekends and waiting until I thought that my parents would be asleep so I could sneak downstairs and turn on my fucking dial-up internet and connect the internet and hope that the fucking loud-ass didn't wake up my parents so that I could fucking get on the internet and jack it to pornography. That's my internet story.
Oh, no, okay, like, the thing is, with the whole, that issue of internet speed, because, you know, time progresses and technology gets better, so internet speed is definitely a part of all of our internet stories. But I feel like I've been uniquely affected by speed because, unlike basically everyone in this cast, I didn't grow up in a first world country. I grew up in a mixture between Ghana, Nigeria, and Togo, as well as the UK. Well, like, I grew up in the UK to a certain amount of time.
The worst country of them all.
Yeah, like, as well as the UK. But like, I was born in the UK. I grew up there, and I moved when I was very young to Ghana, and I stayed there until like, so basically my first experience with the internet was when I was still living in the UK, and my dad would always say, Jimmy, we're going to the office, because he didn't want to leave me at home, and my mom was also at work. Both my parents used to work, and my dad would say, we're going to the office, and I would hate going with him to the office, because it's like, all they have there are computers. And when I was a kid, computers, those suck. Like, who cares about computers? I want to sit at home and watch Dragon Ball Z, it's like, so he would drag me over.
I'm picturing you in that Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, where the computer comes to teach you about the wonders of the internet.
Like, yeah, it's like, who cares about computers? So I went there, and I sat down at my dad's desk, because he would never actually use his desk while I was there. He'd always be like in a meeting or something, because it was, whenever he would bring me, he would always know that the only thing I would have to do is be on a computer. So all I knew how to do at one point was play pinball on Windows 98. So I was just playing pinball all the time. Then one of my dad's employees came and said, "Oh, Jimmy, let me teach you about this thing called the internet." And I was just like, it was
like selling drugs to children.
Yeah, exactly, like selling drugs to children.
Taught you about the internet.
Like, let me teach you about. It's like, because this was like, I think 1999, 2000. I was like 5 or like around there, 5 or 6. I was really little. So he then put on like. That I don't remember where it was, but he just put on like the website he was like, tell me what TV shows you like. And I was like, okay, I like, I think I said Sailor Moon or something. So he pulled up the
and
website.
He shook his head sadly and turned back to the computer.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, but like he asked me, oh, so how do you spell that? So he looked it up and then pulled up the website for Sailor Moon, and he was like, you can look at pictures of all the best shows you like. And I was just like, you know what? This is something to do. I get to look at pictures of TV shows I like. So the internet hadn't been sold on me yet, and it was not until like a little bit later, about a few years later, then one of my dad's younger employees. This guy was, I think, at the time, he was like 20. So
this guy's an otaku.
Like,
so this guy's an early adopter.
Like,
he's probably got an anime blog, and we're probably all fans of it and don't even realize.
So like, this guy, he comes like, Jimmy, let me teach you about this site called Newgrounds. And that's what the doors go. No. That's what the doors got blown open.
Dude, you had some sick ass adults in your life, dude.
Yeah,
this was abuse.
Oh man, like,
yeah, you're the only person I've talked to who didn't learn about Newgrounds from like someone in middle school.
No. Adults taught me about Newgrounds, man. No one in my school knew about the internet.
I think the average person finds out about Newgrounds from some fat, obnoxious white kid in your middle school class who thinks he's really funny by repeating everything you learn,
by repeating all of those shit, all the fucking lines from Homestar Runner and all that shit. Fuck, man.
Yeah, well, someone who's gonna come up to you and describe every Newgrounds video they watch, and then a dick came out of the cereal box.
So but the thing is, I remember, like, he says, Jimmy, I know you like the Mega Man games. Let me show you this one game. And I remember the first game I ever played on Newgrounds. It was this, like, weird time attack side-scrolling Mega Man game called Zero Race, where you controlled Zero from the Mega Man X games, and you just had to complete time challenges. And I would play that game diligently for hours. So now, instead of like, Jimmy, let's go to the office, it would be, Dad, let's go to the office. So I could go and play, I could go and play, like, whatever. And then I remember I started finding the other stuff on Newgrounds. And
I know you've completely co-opted Tom's fucking time to tell his story.
Sorry. What? Tom, you can finish. I'll get back to the other stuff on Newgrounds when you're done. Oh man, Xiao was part of mine too. Xiao, man, I can't tell you how many fucking like stick figure like.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
the super violent stick figure cartoons, right? And they'd always be set to fucking to new metal songs. Holy shit, that takes me back.
Yeah,
oh my god, I watched a ton of those because see the era, like I had an older cousin, my cousin Boyd, who's like 4 years older than me, and he knew a lot more of those like Flash cartoon sites and stuff like that, like the stuff that I avoided because it was like too adult and stuff. But he would show me tons of those violent stick figure cartoons, which are a fucking blast because it'll always just be like some extremely long violent fight scene. God, what was the one where it was like the character was supposed to be like a beast? He had like Wolverine claws, and it was like they created some like genetic monster in a lab, and each episode of the show would be like some scenario where he ends up around all these people, and then he'll start playing a Disturbed song, and he'll murder everyone, or like a Slipknot song, and this guy will just fucking kill all these people, and it was so cool.
Sounds pretty cool.
My favorites were the Xiao Xiao series, and the Xiao Xiao series is this like long-winded. I think at the time when I stopped watching it, it got up to like 8 or 9 parts. And the first one was so simple. It was just 2 stick figures fighting each other, right? And they just had this really well choreographed battle together. And then it just kept getting progressively more and more crazy, where one of the most iconic ones is like their levels to like a building. And this one stick figure goes through all like 5 levels of this building and brutally murders hundreds of these stick figure guys in such like grandiose fashion, and it was so crazy.
It's all detailed, right? Like every punch and kick is like unique and stuff. Right?
Yes,
okay,
like,
dude, did you guys
whole big scenario?
Did you guys have the same reaction to those that I did, which is to then draw fuckloads of stick figure fight scene comics?
Yes.
Because I did a lot of flip books. Like I would draw like just on the bottom corner of the page of a book, like a bunch of stick figure fights, and I always wanted it to be like that, where it was like every attack was unique and the characters would do all these crazy moves and shit. I drew lots and lots of like action stick figure comics in the early 2000s.
Because I feel like that's part, like, because aside from the internet, like, and aside from Xiao Xiao, when I was growing up, my cousins were all like a lot of my cousins were otaku, and a lot of my cousins were also really big kung fu movie nerds, and they would bring all of these, and not just like the Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee ones, they would bring all of these really obscure like tapes from China in the original Chinese with no subtitles, and we'd just sit and watch for hours. Just these absolutely insane, like, I remember one of my cousins had the flying guillotine, and I was just like, this guy throws this thing.
I fucking love the Master of the Flying Guillotine, dude.
Like,
I love that movie, dude.
Those movies were great. So like, this guy throws a thing, and all of these fight scenes were absolutely fucking great. So I feel like when I started seeing that kind of stuff that was obviously inspired by all of these like kung fu movies from China, like, in the form of all these stick figure fights, that was one of my entryways into just being like, this is fucking awesome. And that probably was also what later led me to being anime is fucking awesome. But that's later on in the story. We won't get there yet. Tom, continue with yours. Oh man, LimeWire is all of these things that are flooding back. Like LimeWire is another, like, I feel like everybody's internet story, because of just how the internet evolves and how it evolved in itself, everybody has these touchstones that just, like, everybody
who was around points. In the, like, I think for all of us, we've all been on the internet since the mid 2000s. Yeah. And I know, even though you're younger than the rest of us, you started so young.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that, like, for a lot of people your age who didn't get into it until like the 2010s probably don't know what any of this shit we're talking about.
A lot of my friends probably don't know what LimeWire is, but man, shit, like, continue. But I want to continue mine, but only after Tom's finished with his, like, because I have a few things to say.
Not to co-opt, but I gotta say, at this, I think I remember that I LimeWired the Fooly Cooley soundtrack.
Everybody did.
I needed that.
I bought that. I own the Fully Cooley soundtrack.
Everybody LimeWired the Fully. I
found it at a store and bought it.
I remember LimeWiring like pretty much every single song every single like different version of Chala Head Chala that was ever done. And like, this was way back in the day, because I looked up Chala Head Chala because I grew up with the English dub, and then I heard the Japanese theme song. I was like, I love this song, let me get it on LimeWire, and like 18 different versions popped up, and I was like, let me get them all, and I was just like, so I just downloaded every single one.
Well, I gotta talk about LimeWire. Mine's different because, once again, I grew up more sheltered, and I was familiar with LimeWire from like 2001, because my mom got into the internet around the same time I did, and she was a huge System of a Down fan. Like, she was obsessed with that band, and she would like hang out in their forums and stuff, and so she found out about LimeWire as a way to download, like, System of a Down had shit tons of unreleased music that was online, like all these demos and B-sides and shit. And eventually they released an album called Steal This Album, which was just a collection of like music that people kept stealing off of LimeWire, and they were just like, fucking here it is on a CD. But so we had, like, my mom would download all this System of a Down music, and some of it wasn't even them. Some of it would be like guest spots of them or just bands that sounded a lot like System of a Down, and people mislabeled it and stuff. Like the most famous one. Yeah. Right. And the one that was the most famous is like a Legend of Zelda opening theme. Yeah, and it sounds a bit like Surge from System of a Down singing the Zelda theme. But it's not him.
I was convinced that it was him.
But we had that on our CD. So she had all these burned CDs of System of a Down songs. But, like, I didn't know how to use LimeWire myself. And I know my dad had been downloading, like, porn on there and shit. But
let me talk about porn on LimeWire, man. Because I remember...
We'll get to it. But right. So what ruined this forever for me, though, and, like, because, again, I never used it myself. But when I was, like, I want to say 12 or 13... Going? I think 13, my mom bought me a computer for my birthday. So I had my own computer.
That's another important touchstone. When each of us got our own personal computer.
Well, here's the thing. It was ruined immediately because I got my own computer and all I used it for was like message boards, just like using the internet. You know, I didn't know any other purpose for it and listening to music on there. But my cousin Boyd, the one I mentioned before, he started downloading tons of shit on LimeWire on my computer. Like, he would come over to my computer and download all this shit. So within, like, 6 months of me owning this computer, it became just destroyed with viruses. You could not load up anything. It was practically useless. So I couldn't even get online with it anymore. And we didn't know how to fix it, and I didn't know how to communicate to my parents what the problem was, you know. So basically, that computer was good for about 6 months, and then it was never usable for anything but listening to music again, and, like, writing. I would use it to write, like, poetry and listen to music. That was it.
Oh my god. Oh my fucking god. Let me just rant about that for 2 goddamn seconds. When I was up until maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, because, like, you know, since I graduated college, I've sort of been in and out of living at my parents' house. Like, I live there for 6 months and then go away for 6 months and come back for a year or whatever and go away for a year. My dad was the same thing. He had the Wi-Fi on a timer. So that it would automatically go off after like midnight or something, and because I don't know, he just didn't believe in me staying up past like midnight or whatever. He wanted to enforce like a strict schedule
to this day, I'm not allowed to take my laptop to my bedroom in my house that I currently live in. In the house that I currently... Like, that's the reason why I have to go downstairs to the basement to record. Because I can't take it up to my bedroom. Because they say, oh, you'll never come out your room and you'll never talk to anybody. And it's like, well, okay. And like, but and also if you take it to your room, we don't know what time you'll sleep. Alright then, but they still allow me to stay in the fucking computer room and be up until like 3 a.m. So it doesn't even matter what time I sleep. And I have my phone in my room. So it's the same exact thing. But yeah, I understand exactly. I understand.
I empathize hardcore.
I mean, because like, okay, should I pick up where I left off of mine now, or
if you want, sure.
Yeah. So like, as I said, at that point, I was on Newgrounds. And I started finding the other stuff on Newgrounds, and everybody knows what the other stuff is. Dating sims and hentai. Fun fact, I learned about hentai before I learned about what anime was. Like, I had been watching anime, but I didn't necessarily know like a term or like what to call it or anything. But I learned what hentai was in detail and understood all the ins and outs of it long before I actually learned what anime was. So I was looking through all of these, like, you know, different things, like just dating sims as well as just games that had girls getting naked. I don't know
how anyone could play fucking dating sims on Newgrounds.
It was like again. You have to understand. I was like 7 or 8. I was a kid. I had like free time out the wazoo. I had free time out the wazoo. I was just following whatever I could want to do. So I started looking at all this, and it really just brought my mind really open really early, and it kind of made me an outcast in school because like I knew I wasn't supposed to talk about it. I knew I wasn't supposed to actually like be interacting with other people about what I'd been seeing on this weird internet site. So I kind of didn't have anything in common with the other kids, even though like I wanted to. It was.
So you were like always on Newgrounds, is what you're saying.
It was, for a certain time, I really was always on New. But the crazy thing is, I never went to the forums. Here's another thing. I never had any internet exclusive friends up until about 4 years ago. Like, for my entire life, I never met anyone on the internet because even though I was so free I was so willing to do whatever I wanted. The mindset was, don't make friends with people on the internet because you'll get in trouble with your parents or they'll find, like, it was the thing with that you said, like, except the only thing that took was don't talk to people over the internet. Don't talk to strangers on the internet. That's the one thing that kind of stuck with me up until recently. But yeah, so like, the idea that then came like when I grew a little bit older and I started learning a lot more, and then because the thing about what I used the internet for was games. I played a lot of games on the internet. I was always looking for. I was on Miniclip all the time. I was on Newgrounds playing all the new Flash games.
You see that new? You know who just did a fucking review?
Yeah, I saw that was a trip. That was a trip.
Hypocrite's new review.
I looked at Hippo's new review. That was a trip when he was going through like that. I was seeing my life flash before my eyes as he was doing that. I'd
never even heard of Miniclip before.
Before you continue, Jimmy, I want to because again, a lot of our listeners might be younger and might not have lived through this part of the internet history. Because what really is fascinating, I think the biggest change between 10 years ago and now is that 10 years ago you were always told, do not put any personal information.
Yes, that is so true.
Don't give out your name.
That's why all of us
have anything.
That's the reason why all of us have crazy weird names. That's the reason.
Right.
And I was actually about to get into that.
That's how usernames were a thing.
Is that not still how it is? Aren't you not still supposed to put
I don't think it's true anymore because
I'm seeing
you.
Facebook.
You literally can't use. Well, I mean, you can, but you're not supposed to use fake names on Facebook or Google Plus.
The way I see it now is people like us who are anime fans, who are nerds, who are people who have either internet followings or just do fun stuff on the internet or play a lot of video games. We all make up our own names and those identities are kind of separate. Then we have our Facebook identities where we all use our real names, and that's where, because our families see those, which is why we'd never update them. And that's because that's the reason why I quit Facebook, because my mom is on it, and so you don't really want to show that side. But then because you don't really even interact with that side, it's less you. But the side that is more you is the side where you're using a crazy weird internet name, and that kind of brings me.
I mean, to compare now to then, now we're in a podcast where we've got Ben Saint and Tom Oliver, and both of those are not their real names, but they're halfway there. They're practically their real names, and everyone knows that you're Jimmy, and most people probably know my real name. But 10 years ago, no one would be using a name that was anywhere near their real name. You would not be using a name that's a vague version of your real name.
Exactly, which is why Digibro, which is why Digibro is so far off from Conrad, and why Nino is so far off from Jimmy. Because I remember I was playing. I wanted to. The reason I got this Nino name, because everyone asked me this question, and I like giving this origin story. It also ties into the origin story, because I would play a lot of games, and one game that really typifies my experience with the internet is the Artix games, the battle, those Artix battle, games, the dragon fables, the adventure quests, all the mech quests.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, I know you guys probably haven't heard of them, but those
I've
games,
heard of Adventure Quest.
Yeah, those games are really big.
Adventure Quest. Oh, yes. God damn it. Fucking damn Adventure Quest. Holy shit. Just fucking shoot me in the fucking head.
Yes,
dude.
I knew you guys would have.
Just shoot me starring David Spade, god damn it.
Yes. Those games were such an important, they're all shit. They're all absolute garbage. But those games was such an important part of my childhood and my experience with the internet that
dude, thank you for reminding me about it, playing Adventure Quest in high school during study period in my fucking library computer.
What's shocking to me? I'm shocked that none of us were RuneScape players.
I hated RuneScape because I kept hearing about it. I didn't like. Yeah.
Yeah. If we had Hypocrite here, he was a big RuneScape player, I believe.
Because I remember, so like where Nino comes from is I was trying to play Adventure Quest, and every name because another annoying thing about the internet back in the day was you'd put in a name and it was already taken. That still gets to me. Yeah. So then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make a name that's never ever going to be taken online again. So I put 6 letters that were absolute gibberish that could sound like a name together, and that's where Nino came from. And I've turned it into the Empire. I've turned it in to the massive identity it is today.
It's your brand now.
It's my brand.
So the whole 9-0 thing doesn't actually mean anything. It's just your name.
The 9-0. I add the 9-0 because people always mispronounce NINOUH when they first hear it.
I knew that your name was, I just thought that there was some deeper meaning behind those particular numbers.
Oh no, 90 is my 90 is my favorite number. 90 and 4 are my favorite numbers. Those are my 2 favorite numbers. Okay. But it's 9.
Very interesting choices of favorite numbers.
I have a philosophical reason for 90, but I'm not gonna actually get into that. It's a weird. I said it while I was drunk one time. I don't want to dig back in my brain for it. But so playing these games kind of just pushed me into understanding, because that was one of my first brushes with anime, because I would read the blog of the guy who made the Arctic games, and he said, we use set such and such, I remember he said, I like to use the Record of Lodoswar as a reference for this part of the game and something. And I was like, what is Record of Lodoswar? Looked that up on the internet, found out what that was. And again, that was also another part of how I started learning the internet. When I learned Google, I would just type in random things and I would find them. I would just find hours upon hours worth of just information and stuff that I could just read about. And it was the most interesting thing, because I was like some 9-year-old. At this point, I was like 9, 10, and all I was doing was just on the internet, occasionally looking at hentai, occasionally looking at naked cartoons that I would watch on TV, and then I would also just be playing a bunch of weird, obscure, shitty 2D games online. And it was around that point that I started to actually truly discover anime, because I was in school one day, and Naruto took my school by storm. I don't know how. But Naruto, I was living in Ghana at the time, right? So at home, all of our internet sucked because Ghanaian internet is trash. But our school had this really special router that made it a little bit better. So if people wanted to watch videos, they would all just go and use it on there. So I remember one day I just saw everybody was on YouTube looking at, clips of Naruto. And it was like, what's going on? Why is everyone looking at this weird Chinese cartoon or whatever? So I would ask them, so what is this? Oh, it's Naruto. Go on YouTube and look it up. And I decided to look up, and I was like, Naruto isn't that cool. But what really got me was when I played this Bleach game on PSP at my friend's house, and then I was like, you know what? Let me look this up on the internet, because I didn't know Bleach had an anime either. So I looked up Bleach, and I found Bleach on YouTube, and from then on I just started watching it. It's
funny. I was in my head, I'm like, wait, Bleach was on Adult Swim, and then I remembered you were in Ghana.
No. Here's the crazy thing. Here's another crazy thing. Anime on TV. Not a thing when you live in Africa. When you grew up in Africa, anime on TV. That's
not that crazy. I'm not surprised by that in the slightest.
Yeah, but the thing is, we had loads of TV shows. We had Ben 10. We had pretty much
anime.
Yeah, we had pretty much every Cartoon Network show and Disney show.
Tom's leaving, but I can't tell if he already took off. And
did he already take off?
His microphone still on or not?
He said he's gonna leave the recording going in case he just wants to jump back in. I think.
Yeah, but he didn't mute his microphone. Can you mute him?
You can mute him. Well, no, but what if he comes back? Well, someone type in the chat when he gets back. When you get back, you unmute his. Well, to tell us or unmute. I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, so
yeah, I did it. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
I see. Wait. Let me go back. Let me go back in time. Let me take you on a journey to me in high school. Homestar Runner.
Oh man,
the greatest of all internet phenomena.
I know I mentioned this, and that just like
you did mention it. And I feel like it, and I feel like I can't let it go. I gotta go back. Yeah, I was kind of on Newgrounds a bit. I didn't make a habit of going there all the time, but one of my friends, he was always quoting this. He was always like quoting something and some like, fluffy puff marshmallows. And I was like, hey man, what are you talking about? And he showed me Homestar Runner, and I was wicked into Homestar Runner. I bought Homestar Runner t-shirts. I wore them to school all the time. It was basically the best thing ever.
Ben, you made online purchases in the mid-2000s?
Are you serious?
I guess I did. I think I asked for them for birthday presents.
That's another thing. When you're like, money over the internet is the most weird situation, because when I was a kid, spending money on things over the internet was such an alien concept to me, which is why like people ask me, Jimmy, you pay for a Crunchyroll account as well as you, and you also still torrent anime. It's like, cause I can't get the torrenting, like I can't get the download mindset out of my head. Cause when you live in Ghana, when you live in Africa, like, and you're growing up, they don't ship to you. They don't ship anything to you.
No.
Like they
oh
like
God,
there are some PO boxes, but here's the funny stuff. I know you guys have heard the whole Nigerian prince thing, like the whole type of thing.
Oh God,
shit,
did you know a Nigerian
prince?
Yeah. Guess what happens?
You owe me $10,000, bro.
Guess what happens when loads of people from your country make a bunch of scams and end up on American news? Your country gets blacklisted, and countries around you get blacklisted on Amazon and a bunch of other sites. So to this day, a bunch of my cousins and family can't order things on Amazon, which is absolutely fucking mental. So
that's wicked fucked.
Yeah. So, but like they can still order through some means. Like they ship it to. It's much more trouble than it's worth.
Scorched earth policy.
Yeah, it's like
block the whole fucking country.
Well, I mean, because here's a weird tangent. Because my uncle used to be one of those guys who used to scam people. I'm sorry. Like it's a real thing, and like people
I've
really
known about it,
people really did it. Like he made a lot of money doing it, but like. My uncle used to be one of those guys who used to do it, and he told me stories about guys who would like trick really big businessmen into thinking they were ladies on the internet, and like seducing them and telling them a bunch of crazy things. And the other thing is they would then seduce a bunch of rich ladies and then convince them to come to Nigeria and give them money in person. It was these stories are fucking mental.
I know these kind of, because it's a lot of I've seen some of this secondhand where it'll be like middle-aged women who are like lonely at home, and they start talking to like exotic foreigners from like Morocco and stuff. And those people have ulterior motives, and they just want like a way to get to the US,
Which is why I feel like being Nigerian, also being British, but family Nigerian, like I have this weird, unique perspective when I see something shifty on the internet, and this has been instilled in me like from a very young age. When I see something shifty on the internet, I immediately call it on bullshit. Like loads of people, for example, Tinder, right? Like the whole Tinder thing.
Oh, I know a thing or two about Tinder.
People didn't really catch like people in my college.
Ben, well-laid Patreon saint over here.
Yes, like
Tinder.com/Ben Saint.
But yeah, people didn't really know about the whole bot thing on Tinder. Like until people didn't know that there were bots on Tinder until like. Especially,
bots.
Yeah, I heard butts.
I heard butts.
Sorry,
wait.
the accent, guys. I'm sorry. But people didn't know that there were like botted accounts in my college, and I would be the one to tell them, no, like this is a bot, because look. All of them are pictures. There's no description, and she's talking to you first. It's a fucking trap. Like,
if they're talking to you first, it's a trap.
Like, it's a fucking trap. So, like, I feel like I was the only person who was able to figure that out purely because my childhood had indicated, and because the people I was raised with had indicated me into knowing, like, they had just instigated me into knowing that, this is this is how the shifty side of the internet works. Don't trust it, especially if you get really, really shady friend requests on Facebook. People to this day don't understand that that's a bad sign. It's like, it's weird. Like,
Last thing about Homestar Runner. When I asked my mom for Homestar Runner t-shirts, and she purchased me t-shirts for my birthday or whatever, I remember she said, she was like, Ben, you know, you should make something like this. You should make content on the internet. I mean, she didn't use those words, but she was like, this is a lucrative business. Here I am spending money on these people that made some funny cartoon on the internet. You should do something like that. And I was like, haha, yeah, right, Mom. Not a damn chance.
We are today.
I know, right? And now look at me. Now look at me making content on the internet.
I want you to make a t-shirt where Vincent is vaping and the smoke from Vincent's vape just makes a logo, the Vapors, and then that's the t-shirt.
I really need to sell a t-shirt, even one t-shirt. I just need one. You know what, Nino? If you'll buy the first one, I'll do it. The first one.
If I can pony up the cash, yeah, definitely.
If I have one guaranteed sale, it'll all be worth it.
It'll all be worth it. But definitely, like a Vapors t-shirt would be pretty cool. A Digibro t-shirt would be cool too. Cool. I should fucking make it. I can't make. I can't. I was thinking I should make a t-shirt myself, and I was like, I can't put Huey Freeman on the t-shirt. That's copyright. Yeah.
Since I feel like all of us are sort of getting towards the like late 2000s now in our stories, I think I should run through my whole everything up to that point so I can catch up with everybody. So I got into the internet like pretty early, like 2001-ish, maybe earlier. Well, I mean, I actually, my parents, for whatever reason, and I really don't understand why, because they were not tech savvy at all until like deep into the 2000s, maybe even the 2010s. But like, for whatever reason, they just wanted to be like early adopters of new things, so they bought a computer.
Because your parents are based as fuck. That's why. Your parents are based.
They got a Windows ME computer in like '98. See, but the funny thing is, like, because they're not tech savvy at all, like they will get whatever the new thing is without having any idea if it's good or bad or like how people feel about it. They just, because they'll walk into like Best Buy and be like, "What's the new computer?" And they'll, Best Buy is just going to push whatever the fucking newest thing is that's going to make them the most money. So they bought a Windows ME computer, which historically is frowned upon as one of the worst operating systems, I think. But they wouldn't have known that. And I remember as like a little kid in the 90s, I would, I guess, use like Lycos or Yahoo or whatever, like the early search engines. And I would...
Ask Jeeves.
Yeah, I would search...
I wonder how those Ask Jeeves guys feel. Like, I wonder just how they feel about life. Just blowing the fuck out. Like, I feel like there's kids watching this and like, what the fuck is Ask Jeeves? Like, who the fuck is this Jeeves? Man, back in the day, there was another search engine called Ask Jeeves, and they were going head to head with Google. Guess who won? Yeah.
If you want to find out about Ask Jeeves, just Google it.
Go Google it.
Exactly. So yeah, in the late 90s, like, my first memories of what I would use the computer for is I would search like Beast Wars, and like I don't know if I was on like their official website or whatever, but they'd have like little like thumbnails of screenshots from the show, and I would just print those out. Like, we had a printer, like a color printer, and I would just print out all these fucking, like a whole sheet of paper with just a little thumbnail, like a YouTube thumbnail sized picture of something from Beast Wars, because that was my favorite show. And I thought it was like so cool to have like all these, and I had like I had just like a stack of printed out Beast Wars pictures in my room. And then later, when I got into Pokemon, I would spend a lot of time on the Pokemon website, because they had like a full Pokédex on there. And at one point, I like drew all the Pokemon from the Pokédex, and they had all this other shit. But like at that point, it was just like, website. Like, I knew about a website connected to a show, kind of like what Jimmy was saying earlier.
Yeah.
And then like I don't know exactly how I like discovered the concept of forums. Again, I think my mom was getting into them at the same time in 2001, but I was really into Yu-Gi-Oh! And I found a Yu-Gi-Oh! Forum. So I made an account there. I think my name was just like a string of ones. Like, it was that kind of thing. Like, I would forget my password all the time because it would be something stupid, and I just make a bunch of new accounts for the names, so just more ones. And then I would post on this Yu-Gi-Oh! Forum, and then like I was there for a little while, and then I think my cousin started getting into the internet around the same time, and he would like use it for research on anime, because we got into anime in like '01 and '02, and so like he would start. Actually, you know what? This is all 2002. Jump it forward a year.
Yeah.
He would start like trying to find new information about anime and stuff, and I think he found like Anime News Network around the time. He found he would find these different forums, and so we both became a part of a forum called Otaku Boards, and I would spend all fucking day on otaku boards. Like, all I did was read and post there, and there were like a few other like anime forums, but otaku boards was my favorite one because they had more of like a tightly knit community where people kind of knew who each other were, whereas a lot of the other ones would just be like people posting into the void. There was like Anime Suki forums. I found that like a little bit later. But yeah, I was like really big into forums because it was a place where you could like share your thoughts on things and read what other people are saying, and I loved knowing about like what people are like into, you know, like all the anime we would watch would be like stuff that people were recommending in the forums. So like we knew about Eva because everyone would talk about Evangelion and how it's like supposedly the best anime ever. So like we went out and bought the DVDs, and Hellsing was really popular for some reason. So like yeah, that was a huge part of me getting into anime was through forums. And then of course, like I said, he was using LimeWire and ruining my computers. And then like I discovered the Game FAQs forums and would hang out in there and talk about Tales of Symphonia, because like every game has its own forum on Game FAQs. So I got really obsessed with the Tales of Symphonia forums, and then from there, me and a few people from that started up like a freeboards thing where it was like just, you know, like 10 people on this forum. And let me tell you, there is nothing in this world that is probably worse for a 14-year-old than being a part of like a tightly knit group of teenagers on the internet.
Oh man.
So it just so happened that we started this forum like right around the time that I was becoming like really depressed. My parents were fighting a lot, like their marriage wasn't going so well. I switched schools. Like we moved to the ghetto, and this was when I went to a school where I was like the only white kid there, and I didn't make any friends. So I would just hole up in my mom's office because she was the one who had a computer, and I would sit on the forums all day. And we had the fucking worst internet connection because we couldn't afford it at the time. So like it would take like 2.5 minutes to load a page like of a forum. So what I would do is I would get into conversations with people on like this message board, and like I would type a message and hit send and then just sit there waiting, you know, and then I would reload the page every couple of minutes until they would respond and just talk to people that way. And like I was in all these like everyone had like all these emotional relationships and stuff. It's like a bad anime. Like whenever you see those romantic comedy shows where it's like everyone's in love with someone else and the relationships keep changing, like that's what it was like.
Wait, were there girls in that group?
There were, but I'm pretty like because there was one girl in there that I was like in love with, and in retrospect, I am convinced was a troll. Like, I am 100% convinced that they were running, like, a really high-level trolling operation on me. Like, I'm convinced of it. I don't have any evidence, but, like, it just seems that way from, like, looking back on it with what I know now. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this was, like, an extensive trolling operation, you know?
Yeah, I feel like despite everything I said about not actually making any friends on the internet and not actually talking to anyone, there was this one girl who wasn't necessarily like someone I met through a forum. She was like a friend of a friend, but the only interaction I've ever had with her in my entire life is through the internet. Like, he introduced me to her through Facebook, and then we moved from Facebook to MSN. And I don't know if this is another thing kids aren't gonna fucking know about. Back before Skype was a thing, guys, MSN Messenger was lit.
I was an AIM guy myself.
Oh yeah, I had AIM and Yahoo Messenger.
There was AIM, Yahoo, MSN, and fucking AOL.
Skype killed them all.
Skype murdered every single one of them.
Everyone in my high school, when we weren't in school, we would talk through AIM.
Yeah. Like, it used to be really segmented. Actually. It used to be really segmented, and then Skype came and just wiped them all. And now Discord is slowly coming and just wiping off Skype. So, like, it's...
I remember I was really into fanfiction.net.
Oh, man.
I printed out fan fiction stories that I found of interest, including some saucy ones. Many saucy ones, actually. I printed out some a Legend of Dragoon saucy fan fiction, and I had a big thick folder. I took it to school and I showed my friends. I was like, "Look at these saucy fan fictions, my friends."
Well, as you probably know, Ben,
are you not entertained?
Around that period is when I was writing saucy fan fictions and posting them to fanfiction.net.
I hope to God I never found any.
You guys.
That depends. Did you ever read Tales of Symphonia fanfics?
No, never.
I feel like Digi is like, oh well, Ben, that was my old stomping ground back in the day.
So through those forums is how I learned about a lot of internet stuff. Like again, fanfiction.net was what I knew about, and mostly websites, because I never got into the whole downloading and shit, just because my internet was so bad, and online gaming was a total mystery to me, because the idea of having a good enough connection to do anything like that online was just not a thing.
I feel like the more now that I've moved to America and I'm starting to look back on my life and my childhood, I'm learning that more and more of my personal gripes and grievances are very, very tied into where I grew up. Because when I was growing up in Ghana, I would, again, Ghana, Nigeria, Togo, I say growing up in Ghana, but I was growing up in 3 different countries, but it's weird. Yeah. When I was growing up there, it was I had a console. I would play video games. My parents would I would never buy them there, but my parents would always travel to America or England and buy me video games all the time. And I would play pretty much all the same games you guys played. I had a regular childhood and everything, but I would never play them online. Every single game I tried to play online, the internet was way too slow for it to work. I could never actually spend enough time or actually actively be concerned enough with the internet to try and play games. The types of games I liked playing were usually single player games, so I gravitated away from online gaming. So let me finish this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
The whole concept of online gaming to me felt really pointless and alien for the longest time. And up until now, I'm seeing people say that online gaming is the only true way to play video games. The fuck it is.
People, I don't even
I don't get the online gaming meme. Why can't it die? That should be, please, time travel me back to that fucking podcast. Online gaming is a meme that needs to die.
I think we actually did bring that up in that podcast, didn't we?
I don't think you did.
I had a bunch of friends when I was in, I don't know, a teenager or whatever, that played Ragnarok online, and I looked it up, and I thought that the graphics looked really cool. It was it looked like
Ragnarok
Gaia Online,
badass,
but a little fancier. Yeah, it looked really cool, and I really wanted to play it, but I couldn't fucking make it work on my computer for whatever reason. I did eventually get Final Fantasy. It was 11, the online one. Yeah. I did eventually get Final Fantasy 11. It was a big event. Me and Nate both got it, and we were both wicked stoked to play it. But it was terrible. I mean, it was bad for me. I could not be asked to fucking form up a party. I didn't want to fuck around.
A complicated ass game. Yeah.
I just wanted to play it solo and build up a character and have a cool looking red mage with a big red hat. That's all I wanted. But I did not want to fuck around building parties and grinding and all that shit. So I gave up.
Ragnarok Online was actually the first online game that I did play, and that was in 03, which is way before I knew how those things worked. But again, my cousin was around, and we would get these. I don't remember how. I'm assuming it had something to do with the anime stuff that we were buying, but we would get these free trials for Ragnarok, a 7-day free trial disc kind of thing, in the mail, I guess, probably with anime magazines, I don't know. But yeah, I had these trial discs for that, so I actually got to play that very briefly in those years, and I thought it was by far the coolest thing that had ever happened in the universe.
It looked so cool.
It was fucking awesome. The music alone in that game is incredible, and I did eventually get to play it later, because after this part that I'm talking about, for me, it was 2006, the internet opened up massively, because this was when we moved out of the ghetto. We moved into a nicer house. We finally got decent internet for the first time, and it was all at once. YouTube started being a thing, and I found out about that through people literally just linking videos on forums.
Yeah,
and I was what is this thing? So I found out about YouTube. Then we had a good enough connection that we started playing World of Warcraft because Victor really wanted to play it. And my parents bought him for his birthday a MacBook, or not book, but a Mac computer. It was like one of the first generations where they had the computer built into the screen. So it's like a fatter screen than the ones they have now, but it's not.
Oh,
like
yeah. I think my aunt has one of those. My aunt has one of those that they don't actually have like a standard CPU like tower. They have just a screen and it's all in there. Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah. So he had one of those, and they got it for him because like they told the people at Best Buy that he wanted to like make like movies and stuff on it. You know.
Oh boy!
He's like,
oh boy!
He's
Again!
Like
The Mac is for art meme.
It wasn't even
Macintosh meme.
It wasn't even the Mac is for art meme. It was that they showed my parents like iMovie and GarageBand, and my parents were and like Photo Booth, which are like the stock programs it comes with. But iMovie is like you can put clip. It's like the Windows Movie Maker of
No. I've used iMovie. iMovie is like a tiny teensy step up from Windows Movie Maker, but it's still shit. Like,
well, the best thing about iMovie is that you could record in the program, and the Mac they got him had a built-in camera on top, like a built-in webcam, so you could actually record directly into iMovie. We made a bunch of dumb like action figure movies that way, and then. It had Photo Booth, which was like you could take a picture and do like all the weird little distortion effects, like the Instagram type shit. But that was enough that they showed that to my parents in the store, and they were so impressed with those effects that like you could you could take a picture and make it black and white. It was like mind blowing to them. So they bought this Mac computer for Vic, and he would play World of Warcraft on it, and then. Basically, because my computer had been ruined, so it couldn't go online at all. And what I would do is I would get on Victor's computer while he was at school, and cause he was in middle school and I was starting high school, so like there was a 2-hour point before he would get home after I got home, and then I would also wake up early in the morning. And I'd gotten onto. Did any of you guys read Mega Tokyo back in the day?
No,
back in the day, I like
heard about
Mega Tokyo, the website.
Yeah, the webcomic.
The
webcomic.
Yeah, the webcomic. Yeah, I think I did. I think I've at least heard of it.
Yeah, Mega Tokyo was a big webcomic from the 2003, which I read a lot of those back. I read like all of Sluggy Freelance and all of Mega Tokyo and like a bunch of those old webcomics. But I was really into Mega Tokyo back then, and then I got back into it in 2000, like late 2006, early 2007, and I started hanging out in the forums because I figured out they had a forum
this
there.
is one of those OELs. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's an OEL manga, and it's like the OEL manga, like the first big popular one.
My friend Odunze, who does comics now, he told me about this. Yeah, continue. Sorry.
And it was because the thing about Mega Tokyo is that it was an OEL, but whereas most of those are inspired by people who grew up on like DBZ and shit like that, like the guy who wrote Mega Tokyo was a fucking otaku, and like the biggest influences on it were Canon and Air, the visual novels. Like this is way before those had anime adaptations. He would talk about Canon all the fucking time, and like it wasn't until 2006 that became a popular anime show. You know, like now everyone knows what a Clannad is, but back then that was really obscure shit. So this dude was like, hugely visual novel influenced, and as a result, like the people in the forums were like, to this day, like a lot of the biggest anime fans that I follow are people I knew from the Mega Tokyo forums, and like through those forums, it just so happened that like everyone had an anime blog, and they were all on WordPress, and even the guy who was the admin of the forums, the guy named Omo, who I still follow his fucking anime blog to this day, they all had these anime blogs, and I saw all those, and I decided to make my own anime blog just kind of to follow the crowd, and it was through them that I found out about like both like internet streaming of anime and that it was being subtitled by fans. Because up till this point, I had only seen anime either through Cartoon Network or through buying DVDs, and I didn't know at all that you could download it or watch it online. So they were telling me like, about all these shows that were brand new that just started in Japan. Hold on, I have to unmute Tom real quick.
Oh, okay, he's back.
Because he's back.
Right. Hey, Tom.
Welcome back, Tom.
Yeah. So you caught up to, like, I won't say caught up, but like you were on the front lines of the airing shows kind of thing fairly early. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, for a lot of those people in the Mega Tokyo forums, a lot of them were like older anime fans who'd been trading tapes in the 90s, like that kind of shit, you know.
So they were
like,
just
like
all
Omo,
second. So you just stumbled upon second boomers. You just
yeah. I somehow randomly managed to, like, the first anime community I was really a part of. It was like a good even split between people who were like new like me, who were just finding out about like new airing shows or had been into it for like a couple of years, and then other people who were like long time people who'd been torrenting for fucking since it was a thing to torrent, you know. So like everyone in here like really knew their shit, and they were talking about these new airing shows, and like you know, I just found out about like Haruhi, and I watched all of Haruhi on YouTube in like probably 240p or something like that, and like because this was before copyright was
like that's another conjuncture point. Watching anime on YouTube, kids. Yeah. Remember when you could watch anime on YouTube? Well, remember when that was a thing? Oh man!
Oh god, yeah. But
part 1, part 2, part 3, nigga.
With the stuff these guys were watching, it was stuff that was, you know, it was only getting fan subbed, and no one else on the internet had heard of it. So you really had to be someone who like knew about these shows if you wanted to watch them. Mm-hmm. But there was a site that had pretty much every fan subbed anime on it. This was not the best streaming site in terms of like quality of video or being able to full screen if you didn't have a paid account. You had to watch, if you didn't have a paid account on this illegal website, you had to watch everything in a tiny little screen in like the minimum quality, and it was like, I mean, it was like especially small, and you had to watch everything that way. But this website had every fucking anime on it. Guess what the name of it is.
Were these the early days of Crunchyroll?
This was Crunchyroll in 2007.
Of course it was.
The most illegal website in the world.
These are the early days
Crunchyroll.
I knew it was.
Which had every anime ever on it. So I watched like all these shows that like all these obscure anime.
How far they've come.
That's the thing. I think the reason that Crunchyroll was able to become legitimate so easily is because they had a pay structure in place. Because even though it was illegal, you had to have an account to like watch stuff in certain ways. So I think because they already had like a system of paying for their content, it was very easy for them to legitimize it.
You know the point that really, it's like something that happened very recently that just fucked with my head. I saw a television ad for Crunchyroll while I was watching Adult Swim.
With Anamanaguchi said
and I was
awesome.
and then I was like watching like stuff like SAO and a bunch of shows that will never get on American TV in this ad, and I was just like, fucking holy shit.
I saw that ad not on Cartoon Network. I saw it on like regular TV. Like my parents were watching TV and it was on, and I was like, what the fuck, Crunchyroll?
I think it's for you. You were there in the genesis of that shit. Like, dude, you were there.
Jimmy, did you know that Crunchyroll is about to start doing DVDs and Blu-rays? Like, they're licensing now, I think. Because they said apparently they're going to dub Cabaneri and release it on DVD.
Like, oh, man.
I just read that the other day. So, yeah, that's how far they've come. But, yeah, so it was like Crunchyroll and a few other, like, wherever I could find the episodes of these shows. And then, like, everything... This is like the Fire Nation attacked moment for me. Like... The moment
let me guess. When Crunchyroll started taking out everyone else, like
no. The Fire Nation attack moment came later in 2007. So at this point, I've learned about anime blogs. I've made all these friends with these people who know all this deeper stuff about anime. And like, I think there's like I think all of us can generally agree that a big part of this is finding out about something and wanting it, and then having to go learn how to get it. Like, you find out about, there's anime that's being fan subbed that comes out in Japan right now. And so now your mission in life is to learn how to get it, you know?
Like, for example, like, I was just talking earlier, like, before the podcast started about reading a bunch of comic books. And, like, start getting back into comics and learning how comics worked. Like... It kind of, it was kind of nostalgic because I was learning how to get into a thing I wanted to do that you kind of have to jump through hoops for, because you have to download a bunch of fucking CBRs off the internet, and if they're not in CBR form, you have to download image sets, then convert them to CBR form, and then put them on your phone, or then download a comic book reader. It's a bunch of craziness.
I think that what I think is the biggest difference between what the internet is now and what it was in the 2000s. And I think the internet continued developing in the same direction through the whole 2000s until the very end, and then in like 2010 it completely snapped and went in the opposite direction. But this is what I think people who are new to the internet won't understand, is that nowadays the internet is all about streamlining and putting everything in one place. Exactly. And it used to be that the internet was about having to go fucking everywhere to find something.
Exactly.
Because everyone had their own website.
For example, who here used to read manga week to week on like maybe it would be Bleach, it would be Naruto, it would be whatever. We had in my school when I was growing up, we had like hardcore analytical arguments. One manga lets you enlarge the picture this way, does this way. No. Manga reader is the best one. No. Manga volume is the best. No. Thing is, like Digi says, there were so many places
Manga
you could
Fox
go to.
Before they got fucking
Manga Fox before they got whipped. Yeah, like everybody had their place to go. Everybody had their like. There was Anime Vice. There was anime like those.
Dude, I gotta say, this is not really related, but I remember the first time I ever saw an HD video stream, like when YouTube first rolled it out, and it was fucking Jizz in My Pants by Lonely Island. Like the official music video was like full HD, and I remember seeing it and it was like blowing my mind into pieces because it was so good looking.
The thing is, I like when they first rolled that out, like here's a weird dichotomy actually. This is a weird part of my internet story. My trips to America before I started living here. That's a very interesting part because every time it was, maybe I'll use MMO logic for this. If I was leveling up regularly and grinding regularly when I was in Ghana and that was the normal progression, every time I moved to America, it was like free EXP day. Cause I would go there, I would come here and the internet was faster because I was already savvy on how to get around the internet. My only big block was the fact that it was fucking slow. Now, I already knew where to watch all the anime I wanted. Oh, you guys are talking about how like, you would leave videos on from morning till evening. I told Digi this, but I remember loading 8 episodes of Shaman King before I went to school, coming back and marathoning the entire...
No, I did that. I remember specifically that with Spaceship Operators, because the whole show was on YouTube, and I opened up tabs of every video and left them running the whole time I was at school, and then came home and marathoned the show. And that was in 2007. But sorry. To get through the rest of this part of my story, like, through all those forums and stuff, like, through Mega Tokyo and other forums like that, I started to find, like, the best part was that people would always link you to some, like, database somewhere. Like, Anime News Network is, like, the reason I've always known so much shit about the backgrounds of, like, anime people is because I would just go to Anime News Network and, like, read the whole staff lists of shows and stuff. And,
because they've consistently, they, like, I don't like the staff and they don't like me of Anime News Network.
No, the people who run Anime News Network are terrible, but they are generally a great encyclopedia site.
It's a very good encyclopedia. Like, they have very, do you want to know why? Because they get a bunch of interns who speak Japanese and they just read.
I will say that my anime list is slowly catching up with their encyclopedia, but ANN is still way more useful in general. But Mal has pictures for everything, and that makes it a lot easier to find shit. But anyway, and then there was like Encyclopedia Metalum, which like is a metal encyclopedia, and pretentious metal fans will always tell you that if it's not listed on that website, it's not metal. So if there's some band that you think is metal and it's not listed there, it's not metal. But they have thousands and thousands of metal bands.
Is Baby Metal there? Is Baby Metal there?
I'm not sure. I haven't checked. They probably are because they're definitely metal. But like, I would go on there and just search like the category of avant-garde metal and then just listen to every band on there. So like. A lot of the reason I have such a like ridiculously broad like knowledge with most of the stuff I'm interested in is that I would just go to these like encyclopedia sites and then just look up everything, and I just wanted to have all the knowledge.
That's the reason why people ask me like, how do you know so much about tokusatsu, video games, comic books, etc. Bro, fucking wikis, man.
Exactly.
Wikipedia. Like I remember when I was a kid,
fucking research.
When I was a kid, I would open up Wiki because the thing is, I would do a lot of reading because that was the only thing I could consistently do easily without, because video was out of the question when you're living in Ghana. Video was because it would take too long to load. So if something had a video that I had to watch, like I couldn't watch anime, but I could read about a whole fuck ton of them. Like I could read about a whole shit ton of them.
That's why it's so rare for someone to name an anime and I've never heard of it, even if I haven't seen it. Like I probably know what it's about because I've done so much research. But
so I would just sit down and read for hours, like old comic book stories from like the 80s, and that's how I learned so much about the Flash. That's how I learned so much about Spider-Man. That's how I read through Wikipedia, like through Wikipedia text, the entire Clone Saga, which and then recently I actually read through it, the comic book version. I read the Wikipedia version if you want that story. The comic books are actually completely fucking terrible.
Anyway, to get back to how like chaotic the internet was at the time, though, like. Because when I finally got into fan subs, like, torrenting had become a big thing, but there was a lot of fan sub groups who had been around since, like, the IRC days, and they were really, like, I remember, Live Evil, which is, I think they're still around, they do, like, obscure 80s stuff, and, like, they had put out this video for the first episode of Kimagure Orange Road, and they put in, like, this whole intro at the start where they were explaining, like, how people used to, like, watch Kimagure Orange Road, like, by shipping tapes around the world, and, like, like, hard-coding fan subs onto the fucking tapes, like, onto the actual
people don't realize, like, I've said this so many times. If I had the resources, if I had like the know-how, resources, and the people to know, I would organize a giant long form like documentary on the history of fan subbing.
That would be great.
Like if
I got Otaku no Video does a little bit of it.
It does a little bit of it, but I want like fucking a giant long form. Because this guy Otaku guy or something, Ota King, he made a weird little, like, opinionated video on what was wrong with fan subs in his brief and actually that does factor into our story, because there was a point in fan subbing where they would fucking sub the complete wrong way. They would fucking add all of the weird Japanese text in and translator notes out the wazoo. It was actually a mess. And now it's become a lot more streamlined because of sites like Crunchyroll, who opted for more of a...
That's kind of what I'm getting to, is like with that Live Evil group, like they talked about how that history, and then they were like very adamantly like, you have to come to our IRC to download our shows. Because to them, there was like this sense of community was like a big part of like why they did fan subbing. And that was true for a lot of fan sub groups. And so like in the 2000s, there was this huge shift where, because like everyone wanted stuff faster, so fan sub groups were trying to pick up their speed and get stuff out as quick as possible, and everyone was torrenting, and we had sites like Tokyo Toshokan and Nya Torrents, which are still around, which are where like the big anime resource sites.
Didn't Baka BT come around that time as well?
Yeah, and Baka BT has always been like the one that's like great for archiving shows. Like they have lots of full shows from like they'll have the full highest quality version of the show, and they always had a rule where if you're a member, you have to have like a good seating ratio or else you get blocked, which happened to me a few times. But so there was these different torrent sites, and like because people would just go there because they would have every torrent, then no one would talk to the fan subbers, and people kept getting more demanding of the fan subs. People would complain that they weren't going fast enough. People would not really care about who's doing it. They just want the product. And so like fan subbers hated it. They hated the speed subbing culture because it was getting away from like what they had seen it as. But then once streaming showed up, it just killed all of it, because there was no point anymore, because everyone wants stuff immediately. And so if it gets simulcast on Funimation and Crunchyroll, and like even if the subs aren't the best, like because there's a lot of people who hate those subs for whatever reason, because they can't understand Japanese well enough for it not to matter like I can, but the show comes out on Crunchyroll and then immediately gets ripped by horrible subs and immediately put on Tokyo Tosho, and that's everyone's gonna watch it.
That's how. But the crazy thing is, that kind of reminds me about something that's been happening to me recently, because I've been watching this Japanese action series called High and Low. It's a live action martial arts series about delinquent gangs in Tokyo, and the only person you can fucking get this show from, there's only one person you can get the show from in English. Only one person translating it. Because if you go to Kiss Asian, which is like the drama site for where they have all the Kamen Rider stuff, they don't have all of the second season. There's only one person on the internet who subbed everything so far, and her name is Yuri or Stormy-Chu. And I found this person by complete accident, and they run a little Tumblr site where she'll list the raw, she'll list the hard subversion, she just, you know, and she talks to you about the show. She even has a thing where you can watch, and it has like her like commentary in sub form along the top of the series, along the top of the show. And like I talk to her on Twitter sometimes. I send her messages like, "Oh wow, this episode was great," and I was like, "Shit, this reminds me of like back when I was a kid talking to the fan subbers." Right. This it was a blast from the past.
I mean, I had to. For me, and I finally getting to that moment I mentioned earlier that I completely didn't actually say what it was. The big explosion moment for me was when I met my friend Don-san, who we talked about in the Never Going Outside podcast and a few others. That he was the most internet savvy guy ever, because all he did was read everything on the internet because he was a hikikomori. So he taught, like, as soon as I met him, like, I knew about torrents, but I didn't know how they worked and stuff. And, like, he was disgusted that I was watching streams. He was how can you watch in low quality? You need it to be HD, which HD at the time meant 480p. But I will never forget that the first thing he taught me how to do, I downloaded Shakugan no Shana, and I watched all of it in downloads, and it was the most beautiful show I'd ever seen because it was in HD.
Because it was in torrents.
And I was like, oh my god, this looks amazing. And so I got really into torrenting, and because I picked this up from him, that, you know, this was before external hard drives were really cheap. What he would do is he would buy stacks of CDs and DVDs and just burn en masse like anime downloads onto them as storage. So like I did the same thing. I have like all these old DVDs of like, you know, like Tsukuyomi and like all these 2006 era shows that I downloaded and like burned to CDs, and they're all sitting somewhere in my room.
I remember when I first learned how to use torrents, right? Like, obviously, the idea of when I was younger, the idea of downloading something, starting off to go watch YouTube, and like in 20 minutes it would be done was a dream. That was a dream. What you would do when I was a kid, you'd wait till everyone's about to sleep, start the torrent, go to bed, wake up, and it's halfway done. That's what would happen.
Torrents would take me like days. Like if I was downloading the whole show, it was gonna be a few days before I got to watch it. If it was one episode, it would be a few hours.
It was like you were nurturing it. It was like a little project. Like you're taking care of a plant.
It took a long time for it wasn't until really like the last year that it got like way better for me, because of the fact that as internet speeds were picking up, so too were the file sizes.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Like there was a time where one episode of anime was like under 100 megabytes, and now it's like half a gig at minimum, you know. So
no. Some sites. Well, I mean, if you watch everything at 1080, it's half a gig. But I settle for 720 because there are.
I do too, because most anime doesn't actually broadcast.
Most anime doesn't broadcast in 1080. No
unless it's like a movie, then you got it. I remember when I fucking downloaded Paprika, and it was like 10 gigs, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is not possible. There's no way.
Yeah. Oh, man.
That's another really...
Didn't care for it.
Oh.
You've expressed that on the show before, Ben. I still haven't seen it. It's been hogging up 10 gigs on my fucking hard drive for 10 years now.
It's acceptable. It's an acceptable movie.
So where everything picked up for me, like, was... the late 2000s, because I was in boarding school, and again, this wasn't because of any friend, this wasn't because of any, like, you know, mystical otaku person who came into my life and whisked me away into a magical land of weeaboo-ness. Like, this felt like this was more because I was getting fewer and fewer friends. I was being driven more and more into the depths of the internet, like, because I was in boarding school and I hated everyone. And
being friends with Don-san didn't take me out of the internet at all, because we only talked online. Like, he was a hikikomori. Like, even though he lived in my town, we didn't hang out as much as we just sat on Yahoo Messenger all day and would message each other. And like, And it wasn't just that he taught, because he taught me a lot of different stuff. Like, through him, I figured out exactly how to use IRC, and I would use that to, like, download manga and stuff. And at one point, I was part of a scanslation team, with an IRC channel, which
you're
is called...
You're just going through all the motions of being a weeaboo on the internet, man.
Dude, I was a proofreader for a group called Rice Ballicious, where I would just take the stuff and make it sound better in English. And fun fact, and this is before anyone had heard of anything that this author had ever done in the U.S.
Nisio Isin. Wasn't it Nisio Isin?
No. I knew about him by this point. I was the proofreader, and this is if you go read this chapter online on any of the websites, I've checked, and it's the one I proofread. Excel World, Chapter 1. Reki Kawahara's Excel World. The guy who would go on to make Sword Art Online.
your most hated fucking show of all time.
I proofread Chapter 1 of that, and
you're bound to him forever.
Yeah, but I want everyone in the audience to know this. If you've ever read Chapter 1 of that comic, like, they were telling me, because I wanted to write, like, a lot of swears into it, like, in places where it made sense. And, like, I did get, like, there was, like, a punk character, and they let me go all out with making him swear like crazy. But there's a part where the fat kid, like, he gets, like, this lunch made for him by this cute girl, and he's a piece of shit, so he throws the lunch on the ground, and he runs away. And the way the framing of the panel is, the only translation that would fit there was, "I'm so fucked up," the Shinji Ikari line. And I really wanted that there, and they wouldn't let me because they said he wouldn't swear because his language isn't that, like, and I was like, oh, fuck you. So if you're reading that, go read it and change it in your head. Make him say, "I'm so fucked up" there. It fits so perfectly, and I was always mad that they made me change that.
Let me tell a story of my internet life. This is the greatest story. This is the greatest deed I ever did. Right. This is the ultimate chapter of my life. I'll never top this. This is the story of how I, Ben Saint, like Saint George slaying the dragon, slew the dragon kin. I slew the other kin forums.
Oh man!
Once upon a time.
What do you mean by slew?
Well, I'll tell you, Digi. I'll tell you how this went down. I was on 4chan in, like, probably 2007, 2008. Now, I never got hugely into 4chan culture. I was never a big poster, but it did expose me to a lot of the shit that was out there. And I came to understand the otherkin and what they were. And the concept of the otherkin filled me with more intellectual rage than anything had up to that point. Just the way that they would play fast and loose with their definitions, the way that they would twist their words to change their reality to be what they wanted it to be, the way that they could just define being a dragon to be whatever they wanted it to, so they could say, "Oh, I'm a dragon, I'm a fairy." It made me so mad. So of course I had to go and be with them on the internet. So I went and I found the otherkin forums and I logged in. And I made like
a manifesto of a serial killer.
and I made like a persona for myself. I was an angelkin, and I went in there and I told them, "Guys, I think I'm an angel," and they were like,
"Is this where
cool.
Ben Saint comes from, by chance?"
It's probably all wrapped up in the same sort of neuroses. So I was like, I feel like a connection to heaven and stuff. I'm an angelkin, and they were like, "Cool, totally." And so I started telling them stories from my life, but I started making shit up. I started being like, today I closed my eyes and I felt my phantom wings. I felt like, 6 wings from my back, and they were like, cool. And then I was like, today I passed my hand over my friend, and I blessed him with knowledge, and he got a 100.
This is exactly the kind of trolling that I think was happening to me with that girl who I was in love with. Like, it was exactly this brand of trolling that I was experiencing.
And I just got more and more out there with it. I said, today I can see with my eyes closed. I can tell the future. I have legitimate superpowers. I was like, guys, I have fucking superpowers.
Hold that thought for just a second.
Yeah, sure.
I'm looking at the first chapter of Excel World right now, and I'm seeing this character. I'm seeing this character say, "Arita, you piggly little bitch, don't fuck around with me."
That's how you know I translated that. You piggly little bitch. Only I would have put that.
That's pretty good.
Oh boy.
I gotta say.
Wait, proofreader said that was you.
All right, Ben, continue your story.
Anyway, the point is, eventually I got banned, right? Because they eventually figured out I was a troll because I was just a superhero. I was just telling them an actual superhero origin story.
I see.
But I wasn't giving up. I came back and I had a new identity, and this time I was a mind flayer from Dungeons and Dragons. I had the soul of a mind flayer. And the thing about that is that it's not a mythological creature. Gary Gygax just made it up in the 70s. It's like totally invented from whole cloth, but I pretended that it had this big mythical backstory. Eventually I got banned. Then I came back with another persona. And this persona, I was a Japanese kami. I was a spirit, but the spirit I was a spirit of fatness. I was a guy who just loved to eat. I was just like, yes,
that would be a thing.
All the
that
time.
Would be a Japanese deity. There's a god of everything.
I weigh like 600 pounds, and I'm only going to get fatter. I love being fat. I love how fat I am. I'm going to become more fat, and I identify personally on a spiritual level with my fat.
That would get you double. That would get you double love from both the otherkin community and the people who are proud to be fucking fat.
Community.
The feeder community, the feeders as well.
Yeah. No, and they found this very offensive. I was banned for that too, and I was just fed up. I was like, these fucking assholes won't let me express myself. These people these people don't care about truth. These people only care about, but they just want it to be the way they want it to be. And someone comes in with a different opinion and a different viewpoint, and it scares them, and they hate it. So I went on 4chan, and I don't remember how I did it, but the point is, I whipped up people into a fucking frenzy, and I organized a raid, and they invaded the Otherkin forums, and they literally got the
raid.
I destroyed their I temporarily disabled their servers, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Nino, were you a part of the Otherkin raid by chance?
It's one of those things that you hear about, that everyone talks about. It's like, hey, you remember when we...
Do they?
No, people say, like, hey, remember when 4chan raided the fucking Otherkin? No, people will be like, I remember I heard it back when...
It might have happened more than once.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was, like, did the only one.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, I'm sure you weren't the only one, but, like, I remember this happened around 2014.
4chan does have a long memory. They remember everything they fucking been a part of. So.
4chan, I remember, like, I used to hear a lot during 2014 while the Tumblr raid was going on. There was like, hey guys, post your favorite raids that we've ever done. And then someone was like, oh yeah, the Otherkin forum raids were pretty good. Oh yeah, those faggots couldn't even handle anything. We shut down their servers for a whole week. And I was just like, oh wow, that was pretty cool. And to hear that you were like part of one of those
I won. Yeah, I gave him. I had like a Jolly Roger because I was wicked big into One Piece. I had a Jolly Roger that I made for myself. I gave them out and like had people were like spamming the Otherkin forums with that image.
Oh man.
And it was a truly wonderful time to be me.
The Saint Pirates. Beware of
the Heavens Scribe Pirates.
The Heavens Scribe Pirates. Beware.
That's what they were.
Beware.
Yeah, I was a fucking nerd.
Oh man. Oh, so like okay, but like one again, I didn't really finish the thought, but one thing that really changed my perception was when I not moved to America, but like moving to America did another thing. But when I started coming over to America for vacation, that was when I first really got into YouTube. And like before, all I would use YouTube for was to watch anime. Like that was all YouTube. That was the only benefit it had for me. It was to watch 3 Days Grace videos, AMVs, and an anime. That was all I wanted. That's all I wanted from it. Just a bunch of weird
3 Days Grace.
Yeah, really shitty punk rock, anime, and AMVs. Sometimes AMVs brought both of those things together. But like, and then when I came to America, I found out about it's kind of like I got the classical education in internet memes. I feel like that's what happened. The first time I came was 2008. So I got 2006. So I got a classical education in internet memes. That's when I got my Numa Numa. That's when I got my. That's when I got my. That's when I got my.
From 2006?
No.
It is. Yeah, it is that old.
Yeah, was it? Yeah,
that is ancient.
Yeah,
Star Wars lightsaber kid, Numa Numa.
Yeah, all of that stuff. Like the
Leroy would have been like probably a little later.
Because
fuck, who's the gay black guy song, the one where he.
Oh yes! What in the butt? What in the butt?
There you go.
What in the butt? Oh fucking hell, man!
I remember that.
I got
this
is
probably would have been like 2008.
Yeah, this is all this. Yeah, because I remember I came 2006, 2008, 2009, and those 3 specific years, I would get such a jump in knowledge about what fucking like.
You had a whole year's worth of new memes to catch up on.
Exactly.
You ever get into Shoop the Whoop back then?
Yes! Oh, yes, exactly!
Oh,
man, fucking all of these shitty internet memes were drip fed to me.
I think Shoop the Whoop is the oldest meme that I ever knew. I think that was the first meme I ever came into contact with.
Like...
Badger, mushroom.
Yeah, like, then...
Unless you count lolcats as a meme, I think those
and then
were first.
even Nyancat was one of the memes that I fucking got an education
on.
Like,
from that era, that 2005 era that I was saying I wasn't really into internet videos yet. I forgot that I did have a phase of getting really into albino black sheep, because like. Everyone knew, like, E-Bombs World at the time, and like Newgrounds, I had always heard that E-Bombs World was a terrible place, and you'd get viruses, and there'd be dicks everywhere. But, like, a lot of the content on, like, a lot of the best stuff on E-Bombs World was all stolen from other places, and Albino Black Sheep was this place that, that... I don't remember the name of the type of, videos they did, but it was, like, they had a bunch of videos where it would be, like almost like magazine cutout look to it, where it'd be like just a bunch of like random celebrities and funny memes and stuff like in these videos, and some of them were fucking hilarious. There's one called French Erotic Film that I recommend everybody look up. It's just a fun little song about Colin Mockery and a bunch of memes, and it's great. But like I got really into that for a brief period, and that was also I think where End of the World came from, which is an internet classic.
You guys remember Legendary Frog?
No.
Legendary Frog was a fucking piece of shit. God damn it. So terrible in hindsight.
I think the llama song might have come from Albino Black Sheep.
Yeah. Too. I mean, I don't know. I'm not embarrassed to have liked Homestar Runner, but I am embarrassed to have liked Legendary Frog.
Do any of you remember a video called Gonads and Strife?
Yes.
That's from Albino Black Sheep as well. Gonads in the lightning, in the rain.
I remember fucking okay, like I also the idea of going into the internet and finding like just going deeper and deeper into some stuff that like nobody else is looking at, but you're just there being entirely enamored by it. For example, this is something no one's ever been able to relate with me on. I was a giant fan of this weird Flash cartoon about Knuckles. It was like a sprite Flash cartoon. Like it was a bunch of sprites. They took sprites from the Sonic games and a bunch of other like Capcom video games, and they made like a giant series. It was called Knuckles Adventure. In fact, let me fucking look this shit up because Adventure.
8-Bit Theater. Tom, did you read 8-Bit Theater back in the day?
You know what?
That was the one about the Final Fantasy characters, right?
Yeah. I was so into 8-Bit Theater, I fucking bought that guy's book. I bought his novel, and it fucking sucked. Even as a kid, I knew that I was reading his novel, and I was like, this is a terrible book. This is an incredibly poorly written novel with Brian Clevenger. Fuck you, Brian Clevenger.
I own 6 volumes of Mega Tokyo. Dark Horse would release it, and I
fuck me with a stick. It's still fucking there. Everybody, go look up Knuckles Adventure. It was the most. No, like the videos are still fucking there.
Oh, here's mine.
Shit.
Here's mine along those lines. Fuck, man. I don't even remember the name of it. There was a webcomic that I was like super fucking into. It was a sprite comic, and oh my god, I can't remember the name of it. It was like a goofy comedy adventure type thing, but it was one where like as it went along, the story, got darker and more violent and serious, but always while having like a sort of tongue-in-cheek attitude. I just remember thinking that, like, in terms of writing quality, I always felt like it was the best webcomic I had found, but I can't fucking remember the name.
I'd like you guys to just give a little bit of a look to this, because I opened it up, and the first 5 seconds encapsulates why I was so into it as a kid. Because
I will watch the first 5 seconds of Knuckles' adventure. Oh my god!
What am I in for?
This is so. It's so amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, amazing's one word for it.
It's so amazing.
It's got Inuyasha in
it. It's got so amazing.
Holy shit, I would have loved this.
This is the kind of shit I was so into as a kid.
I would have absolutely loved this.
A little Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho.
I know. Like, this. Oh man. This was my shit.
Look at this anime bullshit.
I would have definitely loved that.
Because you could tell
as soon as I saw Inuyasha, I would have been fucking sold.
Exactly. Because like
Knuckles is cool enough, but like Inuyasha,
they all had special reasons as to why they were in the same universe, and they all had like personality quirks and different interpretations based on how it was the fucking nuttiest shit, man. And I'm just like, now that I look back on it, I'm probably one of about like 100 people in total who ever gave a fuck about this. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, this was something that on the internet that nobody would have given a fuck about.
Well, see,
some
Jimmy, that leads me well into a point that I wanted to make about why I got into 4chan. And like for me, because like 2008 or so was like the height of my like, I don't want to say dark web, but like knowing.
I think we should. Yeah, you should start. But I think we should all talk about how we all got into 4chan, because those are all interesting stories.
Well, I don't know that Ben or Tom is particularly into 4chan, but
yeah, I think I already kind of said I heard that it was a terrible place for terrible people. I checked it out and read it a bit here and there. I never really got that into it. Although I did kind of get into drawfag threads on TG. I talked about this in my interview. Someone drew me my D&D character on TG, and it was amazing, and I hung around there and would like do little sprite art of other people's characters for a while. Yeah. So yeah, for a while I would go on TG once in a while, but that was about it for 4chan.
Well, for me, like, because I had like a friend who was a big time 4chaner, but he was like a B-tard, and he was like a troll who like liked 4chan for the insanity of it, Mm-hmm. It's like I was familiar with 4chan mostly as like a place I would never want to go because it was all gonna be pictures of weird, gross shit, and I'd seen like. I'd seen people who did like 4chan pilgrimages and what they came back with, and I'd seen Tub Girl, and that haunted my nightmares, which for those who don't know was like a picture of a woman in a bathtub like shitting piss out of her ass. And
just go to Ask Jeeves and type "What is Tub Girl?" and then it should
and shitting dick, the classic shitting dick nipples. Which is exactly what it sounds like. So, like, I always thought of 4chan as being like that. But then, like, at some point, I found out about the anime board and that it was just a place where people just fucking talk about anime. And what I have always loved about 4chan is that you can find someone who's into fucking anything you can think of. Like, no matter how obscure your taste is, someone on there knows about it. And so, like, I remember there was a time... It was when a certain Magical Index was airing, and that show wasn't that popular at the time. It was relatively popular, but my favorite character was Last Order, which is like this little lolly girl who is like the lolly version of Misaka, who's the well-known character from the show. And like I just really wanted like fan art of Last Order, and I go on like 4chan and start a thread about her, and like every piece of it that was in existence got posted there. Like all these people who like Last Order were there, and I was like, nowhere else on the internet will I get this. In no forum, in no social media site could I like bring up, like maybe now I could because I'm like famous, I could like bring something up on Twitter and people would know what I'm talking about, but like at the time that was the only way I could have a conversation about this obscure thing. And like,
was Last Order the inspiration for Dark Holy?
No. Huh. Dark Holy actually was before her, before Last Order. But it's my naming convention is the same type of naming convention that they use.
It sounds like the same kind of name. Yeah, so. It's also a lolly.
Yeah, mine was more influenced by like everything I like has stupid names. Like a lot of the anime I've been into is like weird naming conventions. But anyway. the biggest one that I got into on 4chan was there's this character called Biko, Bikko, and she was like, she had one arm and one leg and one eye, I think, and she was always smoking, and she could play guitar, and like for whatever reason,
that just sounds like you know that whole thing about you were telling me about aesthetic persona.
Yeah,
that just sounds like the most fucking obscure aesthetic persona I've ever heard of.
She was like, what the thing is that she was a character from this doujinshi by like just a self-published comic, not like a porn one, but it was just a self-published comic by this guy called Romantic Fool 1990 or something like that, and he had published this comic with this character in like the mid 2000s, and no one could find this comic because apparently he had sold all the copies, including the master copy. So he did not have it anymore, and no one who had it was, like, I guess, willing to break the binding or just didn't realize that it had become, like, the character was becoming a phenomenon. But for whatever reason, people had found out about the character design and, like, the vague ideas of her backstory. And, like, there was a lot of, like, art of her, like, with, like marijuana iconography for some reason.
I've seen this character before.
Yeah. She became popular on, like, Guro-chan because she's, like, a, you know, sort of a gourd character, I guess. And like and so like every once in a while there'd be a thread about her, and like she ended up over time getting like tons of fan art just because people loved this character idea so much that there was like all this fan art of Biko and like people imagining what her situation was like and stuff. But like pretty early into that, when there was just like a decent handful of stuff, then there was a thread about it on 4chan, and I was like, hey, what if we organized making our own doujinshi about Biko and, like, you know, incorporating all the elements we know about her and just, like, do a daily life story, and then there will be an actual Biko story out there. And, like, I actually got people organized enough that we made an IRC channel, and we were, like, planning it out, and I was gonna, like, we had all these ideas.
Did it ever come to anything? Like,
it came close, because I was gonna draw storyboards, and then there was this artist girl who, like, offered to do, you know, was gonna do the art. And, like, she had drawn a bunch of, like, preliminary sketches and stuff, which looked kind of cool. And, like, I had sent, she had, like, a very distinct, like, scratchy art style, which I'm, of course, into, but it wasn't, like, great. Yeah. But I had sent her the storyboards, and then she just never ended up finishing a page. But it was, like, kind of a lot of people knew about it, and, like, people would keep coming back to because I posted about it on my blog, and people would keep coming back there, like, hey, is this still a thing? And I'm like, nope. But eventually, years down the line, someone finally scanned the real comic. But fun fact that I found out, like, much later along the line, the guy who drew that comic is also the artist of Izuna, Legend of the Unemployed Ninja, like those games.
Hold up.
Beautiful character designs.
I just looked up because when you say these things, and this is the great thing about the internet, nothing ever fucking dies.
Right.
I just looked up Biko, and right after her Twitter account,
my blog.
Also Twitter, it's this is Biko, and you can help us bring her to life. My sword is unbelievably dull.wordpress.co.
Holy shit!
So yeah,
this is why the internet is great. Like nothing ever fucking dies. Like
right, but that character is so obscure that, like, you know, that there's probably 10 people who knew about her, and I organized them all to try to make a comic, but it didn't come to fruition. But now that comic is out there, and she's become, like, in the time since then, the character has become way more popular. Like, there's fucking hundreds of fan arts of her out there.
On the subject of web comics, and we were talking about this a little bit before.
Oh boy.
One of the biggest like key moments, I think, in where I've come to be in my place on the internet, I think, looking back, was Control-Alt-Delete. Okay. The webcomic.
I thought you were gonna say something else. All right, I thought you were gonna bring
I think I know what you.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a different webcomic that we've all.
I am gonna. It's related.
Oh,
okay, it's related.
Okay.
Because I was on Something Awful. I would browse the Something Awful forums for a while in, like, I don't know, 2010 or 2011 or something.
It seems like a lot of the internet came from there. Didn't the entire concept of Let's Plays originate from Something Awful?
I think they did. I think.
Well, okay.
The 4chan guy.
The reason why
was a poster on there.
The reason why Something Awful and 4chan are both like.
Yeah.
Oh wait. Whoa.
Something Awful used to be a really big deal, and I think when I was on there was a little bit past its heyday, but still, they had these long threads devoted entirely to hating on Control-Alt-Delete. And every time Control-Alt-Delete came out with a new comic, people would post the new comic, everyone would just pages and pages of shitting on it, talking about how terrible the new punchline was, and how terrible the art was, and like rewriting it and reconfiguring it, and just redoing the whole thing to try and make it a little good, try and see how the author fucked up and how they could maybe undo the terrible crime.
I'm back, sorry.
Okay, cool. Anyway, I would browse these threads all the time, and just look at this fucking asshole artist and then hate on him, and people would talk about other shitty artists, and of course, Sonichu and Christian Weston Chandler would always.
Is that how you got into Sonichu?
Yeah, those Control-Alt-Delete hate threads were how I got into Sonichu.
Oh man.
And I guess that's the end of the story.
No, but the weird thing is like the reason why a lot of the internet came from both 4chan and Something Awful, I think it's because for a long time, you know how everyone had heard of like Newgrounds, 4chan, Something Awful back in the day? Like everyone had heard of those places. So because everyone had heard of those places, a lot of the people who were inclined to be at the forefront of, dare I say, internet culture were the people who perused these places. So not through the basis of the fact that... Oh, continue?
I was going to say, I guess, because I think Digi said before, nowadays the internet is all about places that aggregate content.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, before there were formal places like for that, like YouTube and stuff, and maybe Tumblr or something. I mean, forums like that and 4chan and maybe Newgrounds and stuff were places where you could go to find lots of stuff all in one place.
Yeah. That was kind of the thing. So like and all the creative people who would happen to be there would end up making these things, and those things would be shared around mimetically, and they would become in and of themselves, like the troll face, for example. Those things would in and of themselves just become just like things that get shared repeatedly and just spread all across. And it was just some random fucking drawing some dude made for a thread sometime. That I guarantee you, the guy who made the quote unquote troll face did not like think to themselves, I'm going to turn this into a worldwide phenomenon with this. Like, he just fucking drew a random ass weird, like annoying little face that he thought was funny and just posted it, and people thought it was funny and kept posting it. I feel like that's the reason why the idea of a forced meme is so annoying to some people, because memes in and of themselves are supposed to be kind of pure. Like, that's another important part of the internet. Like, a meme is supposed to be a thing that just happens. It's supposed to spark like wildfire. Like, things spring up out the ether and just now everyone's talking about it.
The reason why I had to tell that Control-Alt-Delete hate thread story, and like the point of that is that, like, getting into Sonichu was like Sonichu and Chris Weston Chandler was like it was an entire chapter of my internet life. Like, yes. for over a year I was on the Sonichu forums, like, or on the Sonichu wiki, like, monitoring this guy's life and monitoring all the developments of the I was of the Sonichu fandom, for lack of a better word. Yeah. Like, I was deep fucking in to that shit. Oh my goodness gracious. I don't know. I just had to say that because I want people to know that, like, that's the point. The point is that this was a full chapter. Yeah. I even got into amateur game development. I started making an RPG Maker game, and I did tons and tons of sprite art for a game that I never even got close to finishing. That was going to be based on his life. It was called Christian Weston Chandler's Adult Chronicles.
Wow.
Yep.
I definitely, like...
That's a sad chapter of my days.
There's a big part of me that, like, really misses the feeling of, like, going out on the internet and finding something that was just not like anything else. Because, like, I think that because we've centralized everything now, where it's like you've got YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and then, like, a few other social media type sites, like... I think that on the one hand, it's allowed us to, like, perfect a lot of the content and, like, make stuff that's better than it's ever been before. But I also think it necessarily, like, pushes everyone to making stuff that's kind of the same. Like,
That's kind of tailored towards that. You know, that actually makes sense because one of my friends, I think you guys know him. His name's Elijah. Elijah's a guy who remember that video I posted where it was just a guy on the phone sending me a bunch of that's my friend Elijah. That is that guy. The guy with the really shitty opinions. So I remember Elijah was trying to get me into the Anime World Order podcast. And they're a really great podcast. And I was explaining to him, like, why I had never gotten into them recently. Because I didn't read them, I didn't, like, listen to them back in the day. And I didn't listen to them now because they're not on YouTube. And I told him that.
That's exactly why I haven't started. I've known about Anime World Order for 10 years, and I've never listened to it. Because back in the day, I didn't know what a podcast was and, like, how to actually listen to it. And then, by the
time you knew,
well, I had always heard that they were, like, very, like, anti-moe type guys, you know, and I was, like, really into moe back then. So, like, I was kind of like, oh, fuck those guys. And then, like, over time, I was like, man, they're still going. That's probably, like, one of the best anime shows on the... I'm willing to bet these guys really know their stuff more than anybody else.
These guys are... No, like, I've listened to a couple of them ever since Elijah wouldn't fucking stop telling me to go listen to them. And... to be honest, listening to them has filled me with almost as much knowledge as fucking listening to just you talk or like listening to Elijah talk, listening to some of my other friends.
Daryl Surratt is a part of that podcast, right?
Yeah, Daryl Surratt is like he's the head guy.
Like that guy. I mean, Daryl Surratt's a guy who, for anyone in our audience who doesn't know about him, not only has he been an anime blogger forever, he has more knowledge about anything than anyone else in the world. He runs like 1 million panels at anime conventions. Like every year at Otakon, there will be like a ton of Daryl Surratt panels, and I make a point to go to those because they are by far the most interesting panels there in terms of just like breadth of knowledge. And he also writes for Otaku USA. He even knows
about pro wrestling. Yeah, he even knows about fucking pro wrestling, and it's crazy. He writes for Otaku USA,
which is like the only still running anime magazine in the US.
And he writes for like Anime News Network sometimes. He's written articles for so many places, and I was telling
Elijah, not on YouTube. So
yeah, that's the craziest thing. Like he's not like I was telling Elijah he's not on YouTube, so I haven't listened to him. And Elijah was furious at this concept because, and it's kind of based on what you just said earlier, because Elijah's much older than me, and Elijah's been on the internet for a lot long. Well, he's been on the internet as deeper than I have for a lot longer, and he is still in that mindset of there's 1 billion different places where you get 1 billion different things. And Elijah, he can't fucking fathom why somebody would shut out another part just because they're not on this site. Because he's like,
I mean. Right.
Yeah,
I mean, in fairness, I have gone out of my way for biggest problem in the universe. Like, I go to the website, and now both hosts have their own shows, and I go to their websites for that. But, like, with Anime World Order, it's also that it's been running for so long that it's, like, it's daunting to think about the idea that, like... Because, you know, even if it's not a sequential podcast, there's got to be 1 million memes and inside jokes and stuff that they talk about regularly, and like you're not going to know what the fuck they're talking about.
I've listened to a couple of them. I listened to the one about Initial D, which has taught me more about Initial D than I've ever actually wanted to know. Right. But like it isn't really like that, but I feel like if I listen to a few more, I definitely get that. For example, the first person, if someone was picking this podcast for the first time, will not know what well laid is. Like,
right. Exactly.
Yeah,
I'll teach them.
Like, well, Ben can definitely teach them how to be well laid.
Yeah. Or they probably don't get why we keep saying patreon.com/Ben Saint or any of the other memes.
No. Right. Like, they don't need to know why. They just need to go there and pledge. They just need to repeat it over and over again.
I think I probably am missing out.
Why did you say simultaneously all the time? That's a very inside meme that nobody really knows.
I think that I'm probably legitimately, I think my life has probably been markedly worse all this time because I haven't been listening to Anime World Order, and I feel like it would probably improve my entire life to listen to it. But
I feel like it would. Like they're a really good anime podcast. Like,
I think the real reason I haven't listened is that I'm afraid of how stupid I'll feel for not having listened to them when I first found out about them in like 2007, and I'll feel so bad that I didn't know.
Talking about webcomics and podcasts.
Oh boy.
Here's an internet thing. Penny Arcade.
Definitely.
Everyone knows Penny Arcade. Yeah. In my opinion, it kind of sucks and isn't very funny.
I agree.
but they have a podcast, and sometimes when they record themselves thinking of the comic, and they're like their banter with each other and their conversations about like what's going on in gaming news and like what's going on in their lives as they're thinking of the comic and writing the comic is awesome. It's so great. Even though I don't recommend anyone read Penny Arcade, but I highly recommend everyone listen to the Penny Arcade podcast. It is Gabe and Tycho are like two of my favorite dudes to listen to.
Because
just wicked fun.
That's actually gonna.
They're such cool guys.
They seem like way cooler than because the characters in Penny Arcade seem like total douchebags, and like.
Penny Arcade is so much worse than them. Yeah. I don't understand.
It's like because it comes from that era. So many great things. It comes from an era when like webcomic characters were usually thinly veiled versions of the real people. So you see those characters and you're like, these guys must be total douchebags. But then they are not like their characters, really.
Yeah, I think there is some element of that, like, the format is just outdated, but, like, it's just what they do, so they're not going to change it.
It's the old Tim Buckley Control-Alt-Delete style, like, fucking...
I mean, that's a whole nother level. I mean, Penny Arcade is the worst I'm sorry, not Penny Arcade. Control-Alt-Delete is the worst. Penny Arcade, I think, is just kind of mediocre and not very funny.
But, okay, and that actually brings me to another chapter of my fucking internet existence. I remember one time, like, I was on vacation in Nigeria, and my dad took me to Abuja, which is the capital, where one of my childhood friends stayed, and he was a huge fan of Tigwa Tig, that guy with the glasses.
Oh, yeah.
And,
sure.
And he introduced me to the Nostalgia Critic, and he introduced me to a bunch of other content creators, like Linkara, and, you know, just a bunch of, that dude in the suede, all of those people. So I became a fan through him, and I started watching a lot of Nostalgia Critic, and that again was another like window into another chapter of the internet. Like people talk about Tigwa Tig now like it was a weird otherworldly thing, but people need to understand.
It still seems like a weird otherworldly thing.
But that, like, for better or for worse, for a long time in internet content creation, that was the golden ticket. That was the high watermark.
Yes, and I gotta say, it's really lowered the bar for everyone.
Yeah,
like, because of how shit they are, everyone else thinks it's okay to be that shit. And the terrible thing is, it's true because that's what people accept.
Because they were the first big collective to get to that point. People have just been like, oh, if it's as good as Tigwa Tig, then I can run with it.
They were the first ones to do it, so they didn't have to do it well, but that established the standard as you don't have to do it well.
Yeah. And then like another.
If you can't tell, I kind of hate Tigwa Tig.
Oh no!
I think we all do. I think it's
like no.
Okay.
Thing is,
I think the PCP could absolutely go to war with Tigwa Tig because I think we all hate them.
To me, it's genuinely an actual personal gripes issue because I really hate Jesu Otaku. Like, personal. This is on a personal level. Me and him, I think, since him is now a guy, it's complicated. Like, yeah. I despise that entire group.
Like,
same as how...
I know that Jeff was a big fan of Jesu Otaku, and, like, that inspired him to make videos.
Both of us hate them. Both of us hate her now. Because she inspired both of us. She inspired both of us on making YouTube videos. My inspirations for YouTube actually were Movie Bob, Giguk, who's now one of my close friends. Yeah, Movie Bob, Giguk, Extra Credits, Zero Punctuation, and Jesu Otaku. Those are like the things that pushed me on how to make content. Now I make content that's like nothing like any of them.
I just want to say I know that there was a time when Jesu Otaku was a big deal because of the fact that like she was the only person doing anime videos.
It was her and Giguk. It was her and Giguk who were
She was the only person doing anime reviews on YouTube, and everyone liked that guy with the glasses style. But as someone who only found her later, like I was, relatively
like,
early into getting into internet videos, someone like was like, "Oh, what about Jezu Otaku?" And like I watched like her last like review, and I was like, "This is fucking terrible. Like this is everything I would not want." Her attitude, the smarmy attitude she had about anime, the dismissiveness over like fan service elements, and Sage, who is the ugliest man who's ever decided to show his face on camera and has the wrongest opinions in the world.
Okay, you see,
he was a guest in the video.
There's footage, right? You know who Gigguk is, you know Gaunt, right?
Yeah.
Gaunt went to Alcon, which is a convention in England, and a bunch of that guy with the glasses people with it. And Sage was doing a live showing of his Evangelion review, and the camera pans towards Gaunt, and you can just see the death in his, like the death glare he's giving Sage, and it's
Sage
the most
is a
amazing
fucking
video.
idiot. For those who don't know, Sage
video.
is like infamous for the fact that he really hates End of Evangelion and like he has this whole like position on it, I guess, that is just like entirely wrong. Like he just clearly doesn't understand it.
Basically, he is. When I say, I like to use the term second boomer a lot, right? Like Digi's heard me say it a lot. When I say second boomer, I mean people who grew up on anime in the second boom, which is the early 90s, where they got stuff like Akira, Ghost in the Shell, all the cool sci-fi stuff. And Sage fashions himself, he builds himself up as that kind of person. Oh, I only talk about 90s anime.
I'm pretty sure he's too young to even have been around for that.
Yeah, like I only talk about 90s anime. I only talk about like the action stuff and all that. And power to you, I like action stuff too, but the way he approaches it and the way he talks about modern anime as if there's nothing good coming out now, like he's one of those people. He's one of the anime sucks now people.
He's a relic from an era. Like there was a point, because this is what 4chan was when I first got into 4chan was constant fighting over whether anime was going to shit, because there was the whole like anime fans from the 90s and early 2000s were really like genre fans. Like there were people who were into anime because it was sci-fi and action and had all these masculine things. And so when anime became like they started having all these cute girls and stuff, this is where we get people like that anime snob who like despises modern anime, even though it's just anime has gotten no worse in terms of quality. The problem is that just the genres have changed.
The genres are different.
Yeah, it used to be that there was a lot of sci-fi, and now sci-fi is not an interesting genre anymore because we all understand the internet.
Now we're in the fantasy era. Yeah, now we're kind of in the fantasy era.
And so it just so happened that the genres changed, and like so during the period where that change was happening, anime fandom was nothing but people arguing over whether anime was going to shit. That's all it was. The whole late 2000s was just people arguing about whether or not moe was good or shit, and like I don't think anime discourse really made any progress at the time. Like that's why like people look at someone like me coming out now and like my stuff seems so much more like heady than most of what people have gotten, because for so long anime has just been literally arguing over whether or not something is even good, not like explaining why it's good, which is interesting, but just like arguing over the quality of shows, because the old guard of anime fans feel like has such a different taste in genres from the new guard.
And even I didn't necessarily understand how to discuss that. Like this is a weird tangent, but like we'll get back on top, but like I didn't know how to discuss that. That's why I have this really odd video on my channel called The Importance of Animation. And it's a stupid video, but one thing I do pride on my younger self is that even back then, I knew that we were in a wrong-headed place when it came to discussing anime. Like, every time somebody would talk about an action scene, they'll say, oh, it has good animation, oh, it has bad animation. Fuck it, talk about what makes it good or bad. Right. Talk about the camera angles, talk about the aesthetic of it, talk about what it makes you feel, talk about justify your opinion. Yeah. And like, none of that was coming through in any of even of the people I really liked, even of the people at the time, even though now I really don't follow their content anymore. Guys like Glass Reflections, guys like Jesu Otaku, as we had mentioned earlier, even though I used to be huge fans of them back then, they didn't fucking talk about any of that. And they would just like look
at how dumb this show is. It's it's dumb. It's
like
not
even Jess
good,
Otaku,
you know?
Jess Otaku, every now and then, she would let her film school side show, and she would get into a little bit of that. Like in her Black Cat review, she talks about
hold on,
cinematography
Jimmy.
a
We're
lot.
getting too deep into reviewer rules here. Which is a podcast we already did before.
Fuck. Okay. So fine. Let me get back on track.
And I think we should probably be wrapping this up soon because I think we're getting pretty close to the end.
Here's my take on all of this. Here's my closing thoughts.
All right.
Anime, shit or not shit, we'll have plenty of time to sort it out after our beautiful white Western god smites Japan with holy fire and lightning for the terrible sin of creating Fooly Cooly 2.
Wow. God.
We still don't. I'm still like in that denial stage where I don't believe Fooly Cooly 2 will really happen. Like until
it's happening. It's happening.
It won't because Japan will be nothing but a smoldering crater before they get the chance. Because a righteous God would not let it happen.
The sad thing is that I have now seen evidence that it will happen because I watched the first episode of the new Berserk anime, and after that, no travesty is too is too far fetched. Like
I've been
oh my
sending
God,
Yahweh my righteous.
I've been sending
Yahweh my righteous prayers. My righteous prayers every night have reached his holy ears.
Oh, by the way, before we get back on track, like we need to do a weeping out on the fucking new season because this new Berserk is gonna be is definitely gonna be a point. Is gonna be a point to touch on. But yeah, okay, back on my internet story. I'm gonna zoom through it now because I'm gonna go from the 2010s up until now. All right, so 2011 is an important year in my life. One of the most important years. Like 2011 is like the keystone in my life forever. June 18th, 2011 was the day I first set foot in America to start living here. And at that point, I was about 16. So I was of the age where I understood how the internet worked. I nothing that I know in terms of how to maneuver the internet has changed in that time. But the one thing that has changed is my attitude towards the things I see. Because now I'm much more open to interacting with other people, which opened up an entirely new dimension in terms of like just the internet in general, which could even be its own other podcast in terms of internet friends, like that I've proposed to other people. But like the idea of going on the internet, meeting people, talking to them about stuff that you're into, which is stuff that you guys had been doing much earlier than I did, but something that I had only been doing up until fairly recently within the last 5 years. And it kind of made me understand opinions a bit differently because back when I was younger, I didn't have, I would watch anime and I just be like, I like this, I don't like this. There was nobody who I could share that opinion with. I had no, growing up in Ghana, I had no friends who watched anime. The closest I had were, this one dude who liked Naruto when I was in boarding school, and my cousins who live in America, who I would see, once every 2 years, and who I now live with. But
my cousins who live in America made fun of me for watching anime.
Yeah,
I went over to their house for Christmas one year, and I put on Toonami or something, and I was watching Rurouni Kenshin.
Oh boy!
And they were like, "Dude, what are you watching, dude? These are just cartoons for Japanese people or whatever." And I was like, "You stupid baka gaijin scum! You don't understand the majesty of the Japanese animation, folded 1,000 times
and manga."
And manga and gaming. Oh,
that was me.
Another important part of how I've started to interact with the internet is torrenting video games. Because torrenting anime was one thing. Torrenting video games is a new dimension, man.
Yeah.
The level of video games I've played within the last 5 years has increased exponentially. Not just because of stuff that you can get on your computer, through emulators, through just a bunch of different means. I've played games because of the internet. I've played games now that I would have never been able to play as a kid because I had a PAL PS2 at a PAL PS2, and NTSC games wouldn't work on them, meaning games bought from America wouldn't work on my PS2.
Right.
So now I've been able to open up my entire. I feel like how old people feel when they're able to, like, when they have a bunch of money and they can just spend money on shit that they couldn't do as kids.
Right.
I feel like that.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that now as an early in my early 20s and my late teens.
You know, my first console was the N64, and I never had a PS1, and I got a PS2 late. So, like, everything before the PS2 era of gaming, like, I only got into because of emulators. Like, I never touched, like, a Super Nintendo. And now I've played, like, probably 100 Super Nintendo games as a result of emulation.
And that's another really important facet of the internet. Being able to get stuff that you couldn't possibly have even come close to getting in any other means while you were growing up. That's one reason why the internet's, like, amazing. And another really important facet of the internet is news. Like, we get news now.
I get all my news from Twitter.
What you guys?
I never watch the news, but I usually find out what's, like, if something's going on. Eventually, like, if it's something mainstream happening, like, Guillermo del Toro's gonna tweet about it, and I'll find out about it from him because he does a lot of, like, relief effort tweeting. And if it's more, like, political, then all the fucking like, liberals I follow will tweet about it.
If I see someone tweeting news, I fucking mute him. I don't care.
No, because
I don't want that shit in my life.
My dad's I don't want to say this because it's gonna sound weird, but my dad's an intellectual, right? He's one of those kinds of people. He loves to read. He's written books.
That's not weird. That's cool.
Yeah, he's written books. He's done talks and stuff. He even has a TED talk online. I'm not gonna tell anyone to find it. But, like,
what's it about?
It's about the difference. It's about the intercorrelation between activism and between political activism and political action, whether or not they're intertwined. Dude, my dad's a politician. It doesn't matter. But, like, when I was living with him, he would always buy newspapers every morning. On the way to school, we'd always stop by a newspaper stand, and he'd always buy one. And I'd be like, why does Dad always buy newspapers? Like, why does he need newspapers all the fucking time? And
because he didn't have Reddit.
Yeah, and then now that I'm older, I'm like, the first thing I do when I wake up is I check Gamatsu for gaming news. I check Twitter for, like, my life, for just stuff, all other stuff. I check Crunchyroll news. I check Anime News Network. Then I start perusing, like, YouTube to see if anyone's made any videos about current events. Then I start looking through the, internet just to see regular current events. And I'm like, fuck, I have become my father.
Yeah.
Like, through the internet, I have become my father.
I go to Reddit and I go to r/the Procrastinators to see who's posted new shit, and that's my news, and then I'm done.
I want to jump on something you said a minute ago, Jimmy, just briefly, because you were talking about learning about, like, other people having opinions and stuff. And, like, for me, because, like I said, I started on forums, which is all about, different people sharing their opinions. And what eventually drove me off of forums, because I have absolutely no interest in that kind of thing anymore, is the realization that I didn't care about anyone else's opinions and that other people didn't care enough about my opinions. Because, like, we'd have a thread about a new show, like, a new episode comes out, and, like, I'd post in the thread, and then no one would actually respond to my post. Everyone was just sharing their thoughts on the episode. And I was like, well, I wanted to talk about, like, my impressions. I didn't want to just hear everyone's impressions with no one responding to each other. So then that's why, like, I got really into my anime blog, because if I wrote about an episode on there, then the comments were only going to be about my reaction to the episode and, like, discussing the points I've brought up. So eventually I just felt like I wasn't getting anything out of forums and I was getting everything out of blogging, and that's why I just totally moved in that direction and never looked back. Like, I've never gone. I think forums are fucking pointless now. Like, even, like, somewhere like our anime, like, they have halfway decent discussions, but it's about like, specific, like, if it's one of my videos getting posted up there, then it's a discussion of my video, whereas there's no way I would jump in on, like, new episode of the show is out, let's all discuss it, because they have those posts on there, and I'm like, no, I don't fucking care. Like, it's too broad, I'd rather talk about my own opinions. So yeah, my sheer self-centeredness drove me off of forums.
And it drove you into making YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Like, I mean, the reason I got driven, like, into using the internet for, like, content creation, it was kind of because well, okay, it was kind of because through internet videos, I felt like I was learning how to make them. I learned how not to make internet videos through that guy with the glasses. I got my start on learning how to make internet videos with this one video that Gant put out called, "Oh, so you want to be a content creator?" And he just gives this really brief introduction. I was like, just write a script. Basically what it boiled down to is write a script, record the audio, find a video editor, put the footage in there, and release the video. And to be honest, if you want to get into video making, write a script, record the audio, put it in. That is really the bare bones of what we do. Yeah. And that kind of is what, like, learning that kind of stuff from the internet brought me to where I am today. Yeah. And it's kind of crazy to think all the stuff I've learned, every single part of the internet that I've learned is now kind of like my little weird, like, background and, education on how to do YouTube. Yeah. Because all the stuff I've done, like from torrenting anime, looking on news sites,
us up to this point.
It all led us up to this point, like using the internet to research information, all that stuff. Yeah.
We gotta start wrapping this up. Tom, you said you had something you wanted to present when you got back. Right?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because it feels, and it sounds really like edgy if you want to put it this way, but like all of us grew up in the Wild West. All of us grew up in the Wild West of the internet. Like it was not in any way safe. It was not in any way
less, like, it was way more decentralized.
Something that I found disturbing is, like, I'll find, like, I tend to like content that's not, like, like, whitewashed, right? Like, I don't expect to necessarily always even agree with everything I'm seeing, but, like, I enjoy a lot of stuff, like, musically, right? Like, music is still pretty out there, and new releases will come out that are totally weird and abrasive and interesting. And, like, whenever I hear something like that, I'm always like, man, you could not do this on YouTube. Like, you could not have a career of making something that's totally out there because no one will find you. People come to YouTube for very specific things, and when they click on your videos, they have very specific expectations.
You want to know the crazy thing? It's kind of, like, to speak on that YouTube thing, like, even though you guys probably haven't been making content on YouTube, like, you guys started like doing a bunch of pony stuff, right? But and around that time, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to bring that up.
Well, I started in 2007 personally doing like weird videos, but
yeah. So, like, but the thing is, back then, to get someone over, I mean, to get someone, like a bigger channel, like to put someone up on, to the same level you were, to like promote someone else was a lot easier because there were video responses. If someone you're subscribed to, you see what they're liking and you see what they're commenting on other people's videos. So then it's like, what's he doing? I want to see what he's doing. Yeah. Now YouTube has kind of gotten rid of all that and kind of streamlined it so that only the people who are already big or can get big easily based on very easily digestible content stay big and get shown, which is kind of probably, it's kind of weird.
Tom, what's the rest of your question? Is there more?
But continue, Tom. Yeah.
That's what
4chan tries to be.
Yeah,
4chan tries to retain some of that chaos. I think there's going to be a
huge rubber banding effect where, like, because especially for people who are making like the weirder stuff, who are gonna start like being like, I don't want to be on YouTube anymore, and there are like a lot of audiences will follow. I think that people who have large audiences, when they migrate, like, they stand to lose a huge amount of their audience, but they will still bring a lot of people with them, and those people will move, and they will change the way their attitudes are about stuff. And I think that, like, there's gonna be a point where, like, for me personally, I have a fairly sizable audience, but not nearly enough that I can take huge risks with it. Like, I can post whatever weird shit I want on my Digibro After Dark channel, and people won't complain too much unless I was to go on like some weird racist tirade or something like that. Most of the stuff I do online is not going to have a major effect on me. But like, if I had a really huge audience, the kind where I could cut off 90% of it and I'd still be like imagine if I had 10 times the subs I had now, and then but I only need the amount that I have now, then alienating 90% of my audience is no longer a problem. And so as long as I feel like I can carry 10% of it, then I could go wherever I want and do whatever I want, and I would feel comfortable with that. And I think that that's the kind of stuff that, like, if I got to that level and I wanted to do something really different and I was like, you know what, YouTube is too strict in what it allows me to do, I want to, launch my own platform and do my own unique art that's not like what the YouTube formula is, then I would do that, and I would carry whatever small percentage of my audience I can with me and go off to do this other thing. And I think that we might start seeing that if a channel with 1 million subs is like, hey, YouTube is too restrictive and I want to do something a little different, then let's all go over here, and enough people will follow them. I mean, I don't know.
How long do you think it would take for Google to buy it out?
Before what?
How long do you think it would take before Google buys it out?
Well, I mean, I'm not talking about like making a new YouTube. Like, I think we'll see more people just making their own websites again. We'll go back to having That Guy with the Glasses collective, or I mean, a lot of those people, they still have the website infrastructure there. Like, like John Tron's group, like Normal Boots, like there's this whole group called Normal Boots. They have their own website with their own video hosting, but nobody goes there because everyone's on YouTube. But if John Tron packed up his bags and said, I'm leaving YouTube, I'm going to post my stuff on Normal Boots, fuck YouTube, then like he'll lose a huge amount of his audience, but he has so many viewers that he can still he could still live off of it, even if people even if he was forcing people to go to another site. And like,
well, I mean,
I think someone like YMS, that will happen. Like, when YMS gets big enough, because he's fairly big, he's got like 400,000 subs. If YMS ever got to a point where he was making enough money and had a big enough following that he could justifiably leave YouTube, he would do it in a fucking heartbeat, because he hates YouTube. And he'd be like, oh, I've got enough audience. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. I mean, I've said this before all the time, where like I'm like, there's a lot of like, I don't care that much if my videos don't make it onto YouTube, because that's not where my money comes from. And like, I've had times where like a video got blocked and I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna put it on Daily Motion, give it to my patrons, and then fight the claim on YouTube till the video comes back. But as long as I'm making the money, it doesn't matter where it is, as long as my patrons can find it. So I really think that is what's going to eventually like when YouTube gets to a point where it keeps enforcing these new rules, and like in some ways YouTube's getting better. They're trying to make copyright better for people. But I think that if YouTube ever fucks us over, everyone's gonna just fucking leave. Everyone with a big enough audience is just gonna take off and go be a Patreon somewhere.
Yeah, that actually does sound like a genuine evolutionary step that the internet's gonna take. But I feel like we're a bit far off from it at this point. Like, because right now I feel like we are in the golden age of YouTube.
It just depends on if things get really bad.
Yeah.
Like, if the censorship stuff gets like crushingly bad, then people will leave.
If they start telling us that we have to release videos on YouTube Red, or like content creators, if they want to make money, have to release on YouTube Red, that would be I would quit then.
I would love to be off YouTube, not even for any like particularly logical reasons other than just I want autonomy. Like, I really value that personally, like being able to have control over all my. That's why I've never joined like an MCN or anything like that.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's another thing. I'm trying to get out of my MCN. Yeah. I'm trying to get out of my MCN right now. I'm trying to like leave, but apparently something that they didn't put in the fine print, because they said you can leave anytime you want, but then what they actually meant was that you can leave anytime you want when your contract runs out, and they never tell you when your contract fucking runs out. So what I had to learn, I sent an email, can I fucking leave now? And then, obviously not in those words, because I'm actually trying to leave. I don't want them to like eliminate my account. But like they were like, oh yeah, you can leave on December 30th, and I'm just like, wow, fuck you. Like, seriously.
Lawyer up, dog. Doesn't your dad know some lawyers or something you could get on that?
Man,
I don't think it's like a big deal.
It's not that big of a deal right now. Like, I'll wait till December and just leave them.
Yeah, like trying to file suit against them would probably take at least.
Well, I mean, I think like threatening to file a suit against them could probably get them to just be like, all right,
that's fair.
Yeah, depending on what network it is.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I've already fucked YouTube. I've already taken my huge following and just fucked right off to the black void that is saintcomics.com. And YouTube will never be the same.
And like
YouTube will never
there's
stop
something
feeling
to me
that
is
loss.
very precious about precious in like a legit, not precious like in a condescending way, but precious like legitimately.
Not precious like the movie.
There's something very precious to me about when I get to go to like saintcomics.com or Tom, what was your fucking site called again? sorcerouslost.com.
What else would it be called?
Well, you barely ever update the damn thing, so I haven't had a lot of cause to. I have gone there like 5 times and read through those same 6 pages again, but
I'm always going to mspaintadventures.com.
Yeah, I used to go there.
That's the home of Homestuck. There's nowhere else to go for that.
You know, if I type the letter T into my browser, then it either auto-completes Twitter or the biggest problem in the universe. Or now I'm trying to convince it to send me to the Dick Show instead because the biggest problem isn't a fucking website anymore. And or you know, the Maddox Network. I really like that. I like being able to go to a website and it has its own feel and look to it. Sorceress Lost is a beautiful website.
It's weird because it's almost the opposite for me, because I've been seeing all these content creators that I used to follow on multiple different sites. For example, I used to follow Movie Bob, I used to follow Extra Credits, I used to follow Yahtzee, and now they're all on YouTube. Now they're all
I have never watched Yahtzee on YouTube. I go to The Escapist. I have it on my I've had The Escapist as like the 3rd bookmark on my bar because I watch it every single week for like
because I always remember that The Escapist recently they let their YouTube videos be a week behind, but I think they let their videos catch up recently. Like,
I don't care about that. It's just like a thing for me that like I've been watching it on The Escapist all this time, and that feels right. And I also sometimes will go and read like Critical Miss or something while I'm on there.
But also something like a quick thing, like I used to go on The Escapist and the entire weekly content schedule would be full. Yeah. Now you go to The Escapist and it's just barren.
They fired everybody.
Like, they fired I used to go
everybody. There and I used to, while I was on the site, I'd watch Yahtzee, I'd watch Movie Bob's, both of his shows. Sometimes I'd watch Jimquisition, and like those guys are all gone now. But anyway, I guess...
and they haven't hired anyone new. Like,
we're wrapping up.
I'd run a week.
Wrapping up
I'd run a weekly anime thing if I...
No, I thought about that. I've thought about pitching myself to The Escapist before, back when I was like not sure if I wanted to be indie forever. But yeah, so that's our podcast. That's how we became net savvy, I guess. And you should too. I guess my parting thought is that I'm a little bit concerned that in this world of homogenized information and everyone going to the same websites, that it doesn't teach people as much about how to like navigate the internet. And I do like, even though I think 4chan are a bunch of douchebags about their no spoon feeding policy because they take it to too much of an extreme, I do think it's a great lesson that like if you go on 4chan and someone posts a picture and you say source, then they're gonna fucking look at you like an idiot because you can reverse image search. You just right click on an image and click search Google for this image and it will find you what that image is. And like if you go on 4chan for 5 minutes, you're gonna learn that because everyone holds to it so strongly. But if you don't, then you might never know. And there's so much stuff.
Moral faggot.
Like I can find anything on the internet because I've been given the tools. And when I have people like leave comments on my videos that are like, how do I find this anime? And I'm like, Google is right there. Just type watch and the name of the show and you're done. And it's like, I've known that forever, but some people don't even realize that it's that easy, you know? And so I worry that as we move towards everyone being on YouTube and everyone being on Twitter, that people will not pick up these skills on how to find interesting stuff on the internet. And I value those skills personally. So, all right, that's it for this podcast, everybody. Say goodbye. Bye.
I have been Nino, Mr. Black and Platinum.
Yeah.
Master of the Mr. Black and Platinum, Master of the Magic Arts. Wipe the floor with all the Elite Four using the magic.
Yeah, we got it.
Sorry.
All right.
Sorry.
Later.
Later, guys.
Later.
Okay. See you guys. Bye.